Look at me and my motorbike.
Previously on the Vampire Diaries.
The more I kill, the more it grows, and once it's complete, I'll learn my story, and all of this would have meant something. And he sounds a little shaky, like he's trying to convince himself that that's really the tea, when in fact, I think you just like blowing stuff up. I think you just like killing people. You were in the army after all, by choice, so... Elena is like touching the blood on Damon's face and licking it with her fingers. They're like all over each other. It's super inappropriate considering she's with Stefan, but it's also super hot. And Elena's like, no, Damon, I didn't tell him that I got high on blood like some crackhead and dirty danced with you. It was a mistake, okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Luke, and I post commentary and reaction and deep dive videos on movies, TV shows, and reality TV with a bit of pop culture sprinkled in between. So today's video is another installment in my deep dive series into the Vampire Diaries. As I said, we're currently up to season 4, so I did upload a video recently on the first 2 episodes of season 4. In today's video, we'll be covering a couple more episodes, so we'll be doing episodes 3, 4, and 5 of the Vampire Diaries season 4, and this chapter is titled The Hunter Chapter. Of course, we got introduced to Connor in the previous episodes, and he is a vampire hunter come to town, and there is a lot more mystery and more to meet the eye when it comes to Connor Jordan. So that is why I've labeled this chapter The Hunter Chapter. Of course, we're still going to touch on Elena's transition and various other themes, and I'm really excited about it. These next episodes are really fun and set up so much to take place throughout the rest of the season. So without further ado, let's just get into it, because I'm not going to do a big refresh. You can go watch the previous videos. I'll give context where necessary, and I just don't want to waste any time. I want to dive deep into it because I'm about to dive in. First up, let's get into season 4, episode 3, titled The Rager. So this episode begins at the Mystic Falls Hospital, where Tyler is sleeping, because if you remember in the previous episode, he got shot in front of the entire town by Connor. So his mother, who is the mayor, had to save face and send him to the hospital, even though he's a hybrid and he heals, but you know, just for the publicity reasons. So he's sleeping, and he has a deputy security guard type standing outside of his bedroom, making sure that no one goes in. But this guy's an idiot because he hears a noise and leaves his post, goes to check it out, and Connor shows up and chokes him until he passes out. Tyler hears the noise and the struggle, so he wakes up, and we go to Connor entering Tyler's room, but he can't see him anywhere. Tyler comes up from behind him trying to attack him, but Connor jabs a needle in him and throws him down on the bed. Tyler's trying to struggle, but Connor says not to bother because it's a paralytic. Okay, guess he's stealing paralytics from the hospital now. Stepping up his game for real. Connor then pries open Tyler's mouth, and we see his fangs and his amber eyes, and he sticks a needle in his gums and sucks out a liquid that we can only assume is werewolf venom. Later on, Connor goes to the van and is distilling the werewolf venom and going over his files. We see a newspaper clipping saying that there's still no suspect for the school shooting, and we see a sticky note that says Tyler Lockwood, werewolf/vampire hybrid, question mark. So clearly Connor's realized that Tyler's not just a regular vampire, and that's why he hasn't been able to kill him, but he can be useful by taking his werewolf venom. We then also see in Connor's files the letter that Pastor Young gave to his daughter April. Pastor Young, who famously blew himself and 11 other town council members up for some weird cult sacrifice ritual situation that Connor clearly knows something about. And finally, we see Connor with 2 manila folders with 2 names on them, and those names are Elena Gilbert and Jeremy Gilbert. So clearly he is suspicious of these 2. We then go over to the Salvatore house, where Damon opens the front door to see Stefan working on a motorbike, and he tells him he's 164 years overdue for a midlife crisis. Stefan ignores that joke and says that he wants to take Elena out for a motorbike ride to help her have some fun. You know, her transition into a vampire has been kind of depressing.
Am I dead? I can't be a vampire.
Get her!
I get to watch you die all over again. I'm okay.
No, you're not.
If she kills someone, she will crumble.
Happens to the best of us at least once.
I'm dying, Lorna. Maybe I'm better off dead.
Blood.
I'm so sick of crying.
And Damon's like, yeah, I get it. Those who can't do, teach. Because obviously Damon thinks that Stefan is the antithesis of fun, which in a way he kind of sometimes is. He's not exactly known for being a fun guy. Stefan can tell by Damon's pissy attitude that they're still fighting, and he changes the subject and asks Damon where he's going. And Damon tells him about how the hunter jacked some of Tyler's werewolf venom last night, so he essentially has vampire poison in a bottle, so he's gonna go find him.
And I'm gonna eat him.
Stefan offers Damon help, but he declines and says he just wants to kill this guy and get the hell out of town. I mean, wasn't that their deal after all? Whoever Elena doesn't choose leaves town. But Stefan says that was before she turned, and Damon's like, yeah, well, I stayed to help, but I take you punching me as the first clue that I'm not wanted here. And Stefan basically tells him to cut this whiny shit out, saying, listen, you blood shared with my girlfriend, and I punched you in the face. You deserved it.
Why don't you stop being dramatic?
Which, fair enough, what Damon did was messed up. But Damon just says, no, brother, being dramatic would be leaving town before I kill this hunter. And then he walks off. So clearly Damon's in a bad place and is just trying to push Stefan away and get him mad so he feels better about leaving town. But I also think he's stalling because he clearly doesn't want to leave town. Over at the Mystic Falls High School in the Stoner Pit, Elena is standing there and then Matt shows up saying, oh, isn't it weird doing this in our old makeout spot? Okay. I hate being reminded that these two used to date and that Matt's truly never gotten over her. But anyway, Elena doesn't even acknowledge that and just thanks him for doing this because she can't keep anything else down, remembering from the last episode that her transition's been tough because she can't keep down animal blood or blood bags. She can only drink fresh blood from the human vein. Weird, right? She's having that problem and she is feeding on Matt and she feels uncomfortable about it because, you know, it is weird. But Matt's like, Elena, I kind of owe you my life. And she's like, no, I didn't get Stefan to save your life so you could become a human blood bag. And Matt just holds out his wrist and says, please just let me do this for you. Are you doing it for her or are you doing it for yourself, Matt? It just helps him with his survivor guilt because Stefan saved him instead of Elena in the drowning incident and now he blames himself for Elena being a vampire. Blah, blah, blah. It's time to get over it. But on the other hand, maybe he gets a kick out of being Elena's only food source, her only energy source, her only source of life. Or maybe he just gets a kick out of having her lips touch his skin. I don't really know what gets his rocks off, but he's a weird guy. So Elena bites his wrist, drinks a bit of her blood, and pulls back after a brief moment. And Matt asks if that's enough, and she says, no, but if I had any more, I'm afraid I wouldn't stop. Okay. She gives him a bandage to put on his wrist, and she wipes the blood off of her face, and they jump down out of the area they are in. And Matt asks if Elena thinks that school's really the best place for her right now, but she says the vampire hunter knows Damon's a vampire and that I know Damon, so hiding at home would just be more suspicious. Besides, I want to be here. It's my senior year. I survived this long. There's no way I'm bailing before graduation. He then sees a flyer on a car window shield saying that there's a mandatory town curfew tonight at 10 p.m. Which, like, what's that gonna do? Because the shooting at the church happened in broad daylight, so I don't think having a 10 p.m. curfew is gonna solve that. But I digress. The Mystic Falls police force and leadership team has never really been the smartest, so. Over at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler gets home with his mom, Mayor Kara Lockwood, to see a bunch of men standing there, and he's like, really? More deputies? And then Klaus steps out saying, not exactly, they're hybrids. I was halfway to Chicago when I heard you were attacked. And clearly he was going to Chicago to relive his lover days with Stefan from the 20s, but that's just my little fanfic. Tyler says it's nice that Klaus cares, and he assures him he doesn't, saying, I should have killed you for the little stunt that you and your friends pulled, stopping my heart, leaving me in a coffin to rot. But Tyler says, well, you used my body as an escape hatch and made out with my girlfriend.
So maybe we're even. Not even close.
So clearly the beef between Tyler and Klaus has not ended. But Klaus says that his hybrids are a dying breed and he can't make any more of them, remembering because Elena's a vampire now, so her blood can't be used to make them, and Rebecca burst the last 3 blood bags of Elena's blood that Klaus did have. So he says he can't have people taking liberties with the hybrids that he has left. Consider these hybrids your protection, which doesn't really make sense because you're going to use hybrids to protect another hybrid so you don't lose more hybrids. But then what happens if those hybrids get killed because they're too busy trying to protect the hybrid that has a target on their back? Like, it just doesn't make sense, but I digress. I'm not here to debate the logic of hybrid on hybrid bodyguards. So back at the high school, Stefan and Elena get to class, and Elena is looking really emotional, and Stefan realizes it's because it's their first time being in a Lark's classroom since he died. And Elena says it's first period and I'm already ready to bawl my eyes out because, let's all say it together, our emotions are heightened. But of course also because in the timeline of the show, a Lark probably died like a week ago, so it's still pretty fresh. Then Rebecca enters the classroom all cheerful, and Elena's like, just like that, I'm no longer sentimental. And Rebecca's walking around handing flyers to the other students saying, I'm having an anti-curfew party, starts at 5th period, ends whenever, spread the word. And then she goes over to Elena and gives her flyer and is like, you're welcome to come, Elena, if you're willing to bury the hatchet. And Elena's like, well, it's a pretty enormous hatchet. And Rebecca's like, well, I'm in a giving mood. And Elena grabs the flyer and sees the address and was like, oh, new house. Did your brother finally kick you out? And Rebecca's like, he didn't kick me out. I left. And Elena's like, so you left the only person on this earth that loves you? Elena is digging in those digs. And Rebecca's being all petty like, well, your boyfriend loved me once. More than once, actually. And this seems to piss Elena off because she's already on edge when typically this wouldn't piss her off because it's like Stefan and Rebecca were together before Elena was even alive back in the 1920s. But this ruffles Elena's feather and that gives Rebecca the urge to keep going. Because Stefan asks Rebecca why she's still in town. Doesn't she have anywhere else to go? And Rebecca's like, well, history's my favorite class. Actually, where is Mr. Saltzman? Oh, that's right. I killed him. And this sends Elena over the edge, so she throws a pencil at Rebecca's face, but Rebecca catches it and throws it back at Elena, sending it into her shoulder. Elena freaks and goes to leave the classroom, and Rebecca is just loving every second of this. Normally in their squabbles and their beefs, Elena is always coming out on top and beating Rebecca, because at the end of the day, Rebecca's incredibly insecure and jealous of Elena, and Elena has everything that Rebecca wants. But Rebecca's catching Elena when she's down, kicking her when she's down essentially, and she's reveling in it. So like I said, Elena leaves the classroom and Stefan follows her, telling her to breathe because she's never felt this rage before. And Elena's like, I hate her. I didn't think I was capable of hate, but I hate her.
I hate that I hate her.
Okay, girl, is this your first time hating someone? She then notices the vampire hunter in the hallways talking to a teacher, and she's like, what's he doing here? And then he walks over to Jeremy and she freaks out, and Stefan tells her to go clean herself up because she's got blood all over her shoulder, and he'll go deal with Jeremy and make sure he's okay. So Stefan leaves to deal with that, and Elena goes to the bathroom and takes off her cardigan and starts cleaning the blood off of her shoulder. But a girl named Heather then walks in, covering her neck, and Elena doesn't see her because she's distracted, and the girl asks if Elena's okay, and she's like, yeah, I'm fine, Heather. And Heather's like, I'm not. And then she moves her hand to reveal a bloody neck, and Elena starts getting the urge to feed. And then Rebecca comes into the bathroom and says, what's wrong, Elena? Getting hungry? And Elena tells her and Heather to get away from her. But Rebecca starts rubbing the blood on Heather's neck, saying, but she's so delicious. And she wipes her bloody fingers on Elena's mouth. Elena slaps Rebecca's hand away and says, you shouldn't be here. This is my school. It's my life, and I'm not gonna let you ruin it. And Rebecca's like, it's my school now. My life. Maybe you're the one who shouldn't be here. Well, Rebecca, not to play this game, but Elena was here first. It is her school. You showed up like 2-3 months ago, so let's pipe down a little bit, okay? Anyway, Rebecca continues saying, and I couldn't help but overhear that there's a vampire hunter roaming the hallways. How inconvenient. And she then rubs her hand that is covered in blood from Heather's neck all over Elena's face, like a full streak handprint of blood on her face. And Elena freaks out, vamps out, flashing her red veiny eyes and her fangs, and hisses at Rebecca. And Rebecca's like, alrighty, see you in gym, Elena. I hear it's dodgeball day. And then she leaves. I love this scene. I love this moment of Rebecca being on top and antagonizing Elena. It's entertaining, what can I say? I'm happy Bexy got a win because she often doesn't. She's really good at being the mean girl. She eats that tea. And honestly, I would have loved if we had a dodgeball scene with Rebecca and Elena. You know that shit would have been hilarious. But anyway, let's see what's going on with Jeremy and Connor, because Connor has taken him into a empty classroom, and Jeremy's like, do you mind telling me who you are? I mean, I'm happy to miss bio, but... And Connor interrupts him saying, I've looked into your family history. You and your sister have been through quite a lot. And I just want to pause here for a moment to discuss the logic in this scene, because why is this random man, first of all, allowed on school campus, second of all, allowed to take a student's private file, and third of all, allowed to take a student out of classroom alone? It's weird. This is very weird. Like, I don't think this would happen. But anyways, Jeremy is like, who are you, a social worker or something? Why do you care? And Connor shows Jeremy his tattoo on his arm that Jeremy saw last episode, but Matt was not able to see. And Connor's like, because you were able to see this. And Jeremy's like, it's just a tattoo, big deal. And Connor's like, no, not just any tattoo. I call this a hunter's mark, as in a vampire hunter. And Jeremy laughs like, vampires. Okay, dude, this is funny, but I gotta go to class. Playing dumb, as you should, of course, you know, don't give it up too easily. And Connor's like, Jeremy, I know your family's history in this town, so you acting dumb just makes you seem dumb. As Connor's looking down at Jeremy's file, Jeremy sees Stefan through the window in the door, and Stefan nods at him, so Jeremy nods back, like knowing he's got protection and Stefan's there eavesdropping and, you know, making sure he's okay. So he gives in and asks Connor, what's with the show and tell? I don't even know you. And Connor says, because the tattoo is invisible to anyone but another hunter or a potential hunter. And he tells Jeremy, find me a vampire, I'll train you, teach you how to do what I do. I'm on Hudson off Route 13. Don't show up unless you find one. And Jeremy's like, how am I supposed to do that? And Connor's like, why don't you start by asking your friend with the bandage on his neck? Because in the last episode, he saw Matt with the bandage on his neck. Okay, cool. So clearly Connor is trying to train Jeremy to become a hunter, and, you know, he has a tattoo that he calls a hunter's mark. So really not just a regular hunter. Is there a supernatural element to this? We will find out. Back in Connor's trailer, he's not there yet, and Damon is able to get inside, smiling because he didn't have to be invited in. Well, yeah, it's a trailer. I don't think he would. That's like breaking into someone's car, right? But anyway, he gets inside and he's looking around, but then he gets shot with 2 arrows through his torso. So Connor clearly booby-trapped the RV, and he sees that the arrows are attached to wire that is attached to a bomb that he can't reach. Ergo, if he moves or pulls the arrows out, he's gonna blow up. So this is not looking good for you, Damon. He's in a rough spot. So back at the high school in the stoner pit, Caroline is trying to cheer Elena up, saying that it was a valiant first day, and no one judge her if she wants to go home, but Elena is raging, walking back and forth, saying, I don't want to go home. I want to get the white oak steak and kill her. That's how mad I am. She made me murderous. But Stefan says, let's just leave the murdering to Damon. Okay, a little Damon jab there. And Elena's like, what? And just ignore her to death? But Stefan says, look, Rebecca's just trying to make herself feel better. She knows that everybody hates her, so she's trying to hate harder. Tell you what, why don't we just like skip the rest of the day and go have some fun? I feel like this day's seriously lacking in fun. You know, in his head, he's just like, oh my God, like, let's go ride the motorbike. It's gonna solve everything. We're gonna have so much fun. He's just excited to play with his new man toy. But Elena has a different idea because she's like, okay, fine. Then we're gonna go to Rebecca's party and I'm gonna show her that she can't intimidate me. She's going to. Okay, that's gonna happen because your emotions are heightened. But Elena's like, I'm just gonna go home and get dressed first. And they buy that. So she leaves and Caroline asks Stefan, does she seem a little off balance to you? And Stefan says she's channeling all of her emotions into rage. Makes her feel like she has a purpose. I used to do that too back when I was. And Caroline's like, Ripper you? And Stefan's like, yeah, Elena just needs to come to terms with it, confront it, let it in before she can let it go. And Caroline tells him, you know, you're good at this. You saved my vampire life and now you're saving hers.
You should write a book. Go on The View.
Is Stefan that good at it? I just feel like he got lucky with Caroline being such a good student, you know, like vampirism, she just came into it super easily. He kind of sucks at vampirism himself, so his track record for teaching is 1 student. Oh, I guess you could say 2 with Vicky. He kind of flopped. But I mean, Vicky was a tough case. Either way, Stefan's got a rough track record. He's got 1 flop and 1 slay. We then get a very 2012 moment because Hey Ho by the Lumineers starts playing. And we go over to the Lockwood mansion where Tyler is bored laying in his dad's old office chucking around a football when a woman comes in saying, so this is where you've been hiding, huh? And Tyler turns around shocked and recognizes her and is like, Haley? And she jumps into his arm and is like, hey, Lockwood. So this is a new character that we're meeting, Haley Marshall. And it's honestly so crazy how this character is introduced. When I was first watching the show back, when did this season come out? Like 2012? I did not think she was like gonna be that important, but this character ends up being so important to the Vampire Diaries cinematic universe. So Haley Marshall is played by Phoebe Tompkin, which is an Australian actress that you might know from the hit TV show that Claire Holt, who plays Rebecca, was on, H2O. The Mermaid Show, you know the one. So we're getting another Australian on set. We love that. And she does struggle a little bit with the American accent. I will say that she has a tougher time than Claire. It's a lot easier to go from Australian accent to British accent than it is Australian to go to American, but eventually she does do better. But anyway, back to the scene. She and Tyler hug, and then she pulls back and shoves him playfully in the chest, saying, you ass, I thought Klaus killed you. And Tyler says, I should have called. And she's like, from your trailer park in Florida? You liar.
You're totally loaded.
And she's looking around at this big house and Tyler's like, yeah. And she says, you know, I chained you up all over the Appalachians. I talked you through every turn. I helped you break the sire bond. You could have told me a real story, Tyler. Okay, so looks like that's what happened when Tyler was away last season. When Caroline asked him, how did you break the sire bond? And he was like being super vague about the details. This is why, because a hot girl was helping him and he wanted to tell Caroline about it. I wonder why. But anyway, Tyler goes on saying, I didn't want anybody to follow me back. Werewolves aren't safe around Klaus and you shouldn't be here either. His hybrids are all over this place. I mean, she's okay. It's not like Klaus can make hybrids right now, but Haley says she knows all about this because one of Klaus's hybrids used to be in a pack she ran with, and he called her and told her that he was coming to protect a guy named Tyler, and she thought, what are the odds? Well, kind of high, I guess. Tyler's a common name, but I digress. But anyway, they look at each other intensely, and Haley smiles and is like, well, the least you could do is pour me some fancy rich people scotch. And Tyler's like, of course. He goes to pour it, and she smiles, looking around, and plops herself on the couch, making herself at home. It'll be interesting to see what's going on here with this dynamic. Caroline is not going to be too happy about this one. And it's looking fishy, Tyler. It's looking fishy. Back in Connor's van, Dr. Meredith Fell arrives and she asks Damon why he was being so cryptic in his text. And then she sees the arrows inside Damon and what they're attached to and is like, please tell me that's not a bomb. And Damon's like, okay, it's a kitten. An adorable exploding kitten. Which is funny because there's actually a board game called Exploding Kitten. That's really fun. So, like that. So Meredith asks Damon why he didn't just call his brother because, you know, he's immortal. He'll probably have a better chance of surviving this. And Damon's like, because I'm stubborn. And oh, look, you're already here. Okay. I promise you're not going to get hurt. All you need to do is be doctorly and cut the arrow out of me. I would do it myself, but if I move, and he makes like a little slight movement and a little like explosion noise. And Meredith is like, okay, just don't. So she grabs a knife, starts cutting a hole around the arrow in Damon's back so they can remove it safely. And Damon is reading the letter from Pastor Young to April that Connor stole. And he asks Meredith if she knew Pastor Young. And she says that he was a patient of hers, always seemed like a nice guy. And Damon says more like a crazy guy. He wrote a letter letter about sacrifice and war brewing in Mystic Falls. Meredith reads the letter over Damon's shoulder and says, what does he mean by a greater evil is coming? I mean, don't we already have evil enough? And Damon's like, you would think so. And then he gets a phone call from Elena, but he ignores it. And Meredith is like, so how come you're on hunter duty? And Damon's like, well, Stefan had a physics test, so... And Meredith's like, you're a good brother. But Damon's like, no, I'm a bad brother. So Billie Eilish bad guy coded. And she's like, you're strung up to a bomb while Stefan plays vampire with the girl who broke your heart, but you're doing a pretty good job of acting like it doesn't suck. Well, I think that last part was sarcastic. Damon doesn't respond because Meredith severely clocked his tea, and she just keeps digging around at the knife a little bit more and says that she's done. So Damon pulls the arrows safely out of him, and luckily the bomb does not go off. Back at the high school, Matt's getting stuff out of his locker when Rebecca goes up to him and tells him that he should ditch Lost Period and come to her party, which is delusional, girl. Like, why would he want to be around you when you made him drive off of a bridge? And Matt doesn't even look at her, rightly so, just ignores her, and she says, look, I get that you're still angry, I ran you off the bridge, but you have to understand, Alar killed my brother, he was gonna kill me, I didn't have another choice. Girl, I'm sure you could have figured something else out. Matt continues to ignore Rebecca, and she looks upset because she's, for some reason, so down bad for this man. And she says, look, Matt, I never wanted to hurt you. Well, girl, you did. Okay, and you knew who was driving the truck. Matt looks at Rebecca, gives her a disgusted look, slams his locker, and walks away. He told her. As Matt's walking down the hallways, he hears Connor from behind him, because for some reason he's still here. And he's like, what did you say it was last time? Hickeys? Girlfriend likes to get kinky? And then he rips the band-aid off of Matt's wrist to reveal the 2 fang marks and says, who are you letting feed on you? And Matt's like, I have no idea where that came from, playing off that he's like being compelled. But Connor grabs Matt and shoves him against the wall, putting a knife to his throat, like a knife to a student's throat on school campus. Like, this man is unhinged. And he's like, which one of your high school friends is a bloodsucker? Which is so Jacob Black from Twilight coded. He always used to say bloodsucker. And in this moment, Matt realizes that he can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So he says, Rebecca Michelson. And Connor's like, thanks. By the end of the day, she'll be long gone. And he throws Matt against the wall, knocking him out. Crazy things going on at Mystic Falls High. And also, now Matt has put the target on Rebecca, which is slay because, you know, he can get some revenge. He can piss her off a little bit. And at the end of the day, the stakes are really low because there's only one way to kill an original. And we know that Connor doesn't have the one and only White Oak steak. Speaking of, over at the Salvatore house, Damon goes into his bedroom to find Elena ransacking it. Like, she's digging all of his clothes and stuff out of these drawers. It's just so rude and disrespectful. And he's like, I hope you're gonna clean that up. And Elena's like, oh, sorry, I was just looking for some bourbon for Rebecca's party. Yours is better than Stefan's. And he's like, okay, top drawer. And then she goes to open a drawer in the dresser and she pulls out a pair of underwear. And it's like, you keep your alcohol in your underwear drawer? And Damon's like, no, but that's clearly not what you were looking for. Do you really think I would leave the last remaining White Oak steak where any vampire could come and get it? And there are so many things wrong with this lie from Elena. It's just so stupid. Because first of all, Damon drinks bourbon like it's water or blood. There's bourbon literally all over this house. Why would you have to go into his room to find it? Second of all, his bourbon being better than Stefan's, do they each have their own bourbon? Like, and also Elena's not a bourbon connoisseur. She like almost gags and throws up every time she has to drink it. She only drinks it when she's essentially almost been killed and Stefan tells her it'll take the edge off. Third of all, or fourth of all, I don't know, what high school student is drinking bourbon at a party? Like, what? It was just such a bad lie, but I think Elena was just having to think quick on her feet. Anyway, Damon opens his shirt to look at his wound, and Elena asks what happened to him, and he says a hunter mishap. And she doesn't ask any follow-up questions, doesn't ask if he's okay, just makes it about her and is like, did you know he was at my school today? And Damon's like, yeah, I know, Jeremy told me. And Elena's like, what were you doing talking to Jeremy? Because, you know, Damon and Jeremy have a weird track record, what with Damon snapping Jeremy's neck. But at the same time, they also sometimes have this big brother, little brother, buddy relationship going, so it's not crazy that they would talk to each other. And he tells Elena to ponder the thought that Jeremy might actually be useful. And at this point, Damon's taken off his shirt and he goes to unbutton his pants, and Elena is transfixed by his body tea, looking up and down, enjoying the view. And Damon's like, are you staying for the show or? And Elena quickly snaps out of it and storms out of the room saying, I'm finding that steak. Which, honestly, fair enough. Rebecca killed her, so it's only fair that she gets to try and kill her. So we cut to Connor outside of his RV. He's carving a symbol into a wooden stake when Jeremy arrives, and Connor's like, do you have a vampire for me? And Jeremy's like, no, but I know where you can find one. There's this doctor, Meredith Fell. She uses vampire blood in surgery to heal people. She has a deal with one, her blood for his. So clearly Jeremy's come up with this plan with Damon, and Meredith is kind of on board. And Connor just takes this for truth. He is so trusting of Jeremy, and he says, you see, that's the problem. When a town protects one vampire, word spreads. They come, they feed, they turn.
Soon you got a full-on infestation. Your high school, for example,
It's crawling a little.
One of them's even throwing a party tonight. I just love the way that Connor talks about vampires. Like, they feed, they turn, you got an infestation. He's like like an exterminator, you know, like a termite exterminator, but for vampires. I like it. It's funny. He's got a lot of passion. Ooh, brats. Passion for fashion. Anyway, Jeremy asks if they're going to this party, and Connor says, no, we're going to the hospital to see this doctor. As long as people are drinking at this party, I got it covered. They'll all be dead by sundown. Okay, wonder what he did to the alcohol. Also, I feel like Connor is just being so naive, like just trusting Jeremy's plan. Like, he's clearly walking to a trap. If he took any notice to how Elena is involved with Damon, and then Matt was like being close to Elena at the funeral, and then Jeremy was next to Matt, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that Jeremy is involved with these vampires. But he's got rage on the brain, so that's all he can really focus on. So we cut to Rebecca's house for her anti-curfew party that's starting during the day. And we have a bunch of teenagers, you know, getting their underage drinking on. Elena and Stefan arrive to the house and are able to get in without being invited in. So they're like, I wonder who died here. And Elena then sees Rebecca and instantly starts glaring at her. And Stefan's like, you're fixating again. And she's like, or just quietly hating from afar. But then Stefan stops the guy and compels him to give him his solo cup of beer and gives it to Elena and says to drink it, have fun, let go. Which is gross. You couldn't have gotten your girlfriend a fresh cup of beer. The keg was just outside. Elena smiles and takes the cup to her mouth, but before she drinks it, she gets distracted by April and says she's going to go over and talk to her. And Stefan says, okay, all good. I'm going to go get something a bit stronger than beer. So he goes to look for a drink. Back at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler opens the front door to see Caroline with a huge smile, saying she's ditching Rebecca's party, and she gives him a big kiss, but then notices all the guys behind him and is like, what's up with all the testosterone? And Tyler's like, they're hybrids, I'm on house arrest. And Caroline's like, from who? Your mom? Just sneak out. And Tyler's like, not exactly my mom. And then Caroline realizes and she's like, Klaus, seriously? Because, you know, Caroline probably thought now that Tyler's sire bond with Klaus is over, he'd be done with him. But if only you were that lucky. We then go back to Tyler's deceased father's study where Haley is snooping around casually looking at photos, you know, she's bored. And then Klaus shows up and is like, you're a new face. He's like, who are you? And Haley says, I take it from your accent that you're one of the old ones. Okay, I guess all British people are the old ones. And she's like, Klaus, I presume? And he's like, oh, my reputation precedes me. Hopefully not all bad. And Haley's like,
A little bad. Mostly repulsive.
which Klaus actually looks offended by, even though he knows he has a horrible reputation, but he probably just doesn't like hearing that from a pretty girl. And Klaus tries to clap back by saying to Haley, so you're a friend of Tyler. That's funny. He's never mentioned you. Which, why would he, Klaus? You're not exactly close. But Klaus is eavesdropping here because he uses his vamp hearing to eavesdrop on Caroline and Tyler at the doorway, and he hears Tyler blowing Caroline off and saying that he's just no fun to be around and she should go to the party. And she's like, I'd rather be with you. And he's like, no, trust me, I'm no fun to be around right now. And Caroline's like giving him an awkward smile because you can tell something's up with him. And then back with Klaus, he smiles to Haley and is like, and I think I know why he hasn't mentioned you. Which is just so funny because one thing about Klaus is he loves relationship tea. He wants the goss. He wants to know. Like, and also he likes Caroline. So if he can find a way to mess up Tyler and Caroline's relationship, in his mind, that means he thinks he has more of a chance with Caroline. Back at Rebecca's house party, April's in the kitchen looking like she doesn't know what to do with her hands all alone. We've all been there. And Elena comes in and April's like, oh, thank God, someone I know. And Elena offers April that cup of beer that Stefan gave her. And April's like, you used to babysit me. And Elena's like, and now I'm giving you beer. Sounds about right. And they both laugh, but April takes the cup of beer and drinks it and says, oh, if only my dad could see me now. And Elena's like, oh, how are you doing with everything? Because of course these two are going to bring the depressing energy to the party. And April says, I'm trudging through my denial phase, dreaming up conspiracy theories. My first weekend home from boarding school, my dad smelled cigarette smoke on my clothes before I even walked in the door. He would have noticed a gas leak in the house. Well, yeah, girl, he did notice it because he's the one who blew the house up. And it's really funny that the 16-year-old girl who just got back to town is able to figure out this investigation better than the police department of Mystic Falls. But are we surprised? Elena asks April if she doesn't think it's an accident, and April says, you know, I know there's no investigation going on, that everyone's calling it an accident, but with that and the shooting at the church, like something just feels. And then Rebecca walks into the kitchen.
Like something wicked this way comes. It's like this town's cursed or something.
And Elena rolls her eyes, and Rebecca's already having fun messing with her. And Elena tells April, why don't you go look around the house and I'll catch up with you. And for some reason, April just listens to her and does that. Like she's a sim with no autonomy. But anyway, after she's left, Rebecca says to Elena, did I forget to uninvite you? Which, you know, is weak, but a classic. And Elena gets straight to her point and says, are you the one who blew up April's father's house to get revenge on the council? And Rebecca's like, I don't give a damn about some dodgy middle-aged council. Which, why would she? She gets to deal with them for that one episode. She never really dealt with them before. And they weren't exactly threatening. Rebecca continues saying, you come into my house, throw around false accusations, and then you have the nerve to drink my beer. And she grabs the cup out of Elena's hand and drinks the beer, which, if we're keeping track of this cup of beer, it's like third removed, like fourth hand beer. Stefan grabbed it from some random guy and then gave it to Elena, who then gave it to April, who now Rebecca's drinking it. Y'all are really nasty. Like, I know you're a vampire and you can't get sick or catch STDs or anything or get roofied, but like still, it's gross to be drinking this secondhand beer. Anyways, Elena's skin suddenly starts burning and she realizes that when Rebecca grabbed the beer, she also grabbed her ring, and she vamp speeds into a shady corner to get out of the sun and says, give me my ring back. But Rebecca throws it in the garbage disposal in the sink and turns it on, smiling, saying, get it yourself. And she walks away. Boom. You know, she kind of ate with that one. I'll give it to you, Rebecca. After a bit of panicking, Elena gets her shit together and vamp speeds over to the disposal, grabs her ring. Her skin's burning, but once she shoves it on, she starts healing, and she, pissed off, walks over to her bag and grabs out the white oak stake. She's charging to go kill Rebecca in front of all these random teenagers at this party, but she gets stopped by Stefan. He asks her if Damon gave her that, and she says yes, reluctantly. Look, Stefan, she's not gonna stop pushing and pushing. And Stefan's like, okay, well, if you want to go kill her, do it. I won't stop you. And Elena looks at him like, what's the catch? Oh, he's gonna go on one of his lectures now. And he does, because Stefan says, but see, here's what'll happen. You'll feel good about it for 10 seconds, and then after that, tens of thousands of vampires all over the world will start to die. Every vampire Rebecca has ever turned will die. See, rage is a powerful feeling, but guilt, take it from me, it'll destroy you. This is a really good tactic, because even though Elena wants to kill Rebecca, she doesn't want like tens of thousands of innocent vampires to die along with her because they're attached to her sire line, you know? So Stefan leaves the decision up to her, saying, so you can either go after her or you can get on the back of my motorcycle and we can get the hell out of here. What's with him and this motorcycle? He just really wants to ride this motorcycle. But Elena hands him the white oak stake and goes to leave with him. They pass Rebecca on their way out on the outdoor like balcony as she's looking down over the party, and she's like, y'all leaving so soon? And Elena's like, not yet. I didn't get a drink. She gives Stefan her bag and she does a keg stand, and everybody around her is like, chug, 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 chug. Ugh. And she gets down, wiping her face, smiling, and everybody's cheering. Elena has had her cool girl popular status restored. It was never really gone anyway, but she's showing Rebecca, remember girl, I'm popular. And you're not, okay? And Rebecca looks pissed. But Elena and Stefan leave, and Rebecca watches them go, but her vision starts to get blurry, and she stumbles. She goes inside to look in a mirror, and she sees red veins pulsing through her skin. And it takes a rocket scientist to deduce that Connor clearly put the werewolf venom in the kegs at this party. And Elena drank from the kegs, so... Back at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler enters his father's study to see Klaus sitting there with his feet up on the table, saying, she's quite fetching, that Haley. And Tyler asks where she is, and Klaus is like, oh, she had to run, but I made sure she went out the back door so Caroline didn't see her. And he's smiling, enjoying every minute of this. And Tyler's like, look, whatever you think you know. But Klaus interrupts him and gets up and says, I don't know anything, but I've put together a pretty convincing picture. Why don't you go ahead and tell me where my imagination deviates from reality, okay? You went off to the Appalachians to break my sire bond. There you met a pack of werewolves, begged them for help. Among them was a girl. She was gorgeous with the same animal instincts as you. Emotions ran high, inhibitions ran low.
Stop it.
Then, in a moment of weakness,
The thick sexual tension
became something more real. Klaus's little fanfic. And throughout this monologue, he's whispering in Tyler's ear, and Tyler's telling him, stop, stop. But after Klaus says Caroline has no idea, Tyler is gagged because Klaus clocked him. He's like, I see what's going on here. You cheated on Caroline. Which, I mean, we don't get confirmation of that, but based on Tyler's reaction, it's not looking good. And for Klaus, this is perfect ammunition to incite a breakup. The tension is broken when Tyler gets a phone call from Damon and Klaus answers it. Klaus says Tyler's otherwise occupied making big decisions about honesty and whatnot. And Damon doesn't care to touch that info. He just says, I'm going after the vampire hunter and wanted to see if Tyler would join. And Klaus is like, oh, he wouldn't. I, however, and he smiles. So Klaus is going to go join Team Damon. We then get a quick scene of Stefan finally riding that goddamn motorbike motorbike with Elena on the back. They're both wearing helmets, which is so goofy because I'm all about like promoting, you know, safety, wear your helmet, but they're vampires. Like they're not going to die if they have an accident on the motorbike. And it's just not sexy. Like the helmet on Stefan like goes up to here, like it makes his eyebrows look weird. I don't know. I think it's funny. But Elena seems to be having a lot of fun for the first time since she transitioned, and she gets up standing on the back of the motorbike, really starting to enjoy, you know, what vampirism has to offer. And it's a really cute scene. We need a little fun moment here to break the tension, break the ice. So Elena can't be miserable all the time, but never fear, the depression comes back. And as she's doing this, Stefan's smiling behind her. You know, he's thinking to himself, see, Damon, I am fun. I can be fun. Look at me and my motorbike. Over at the Mystic Falls Hospital, Meredith is walking through the hallways with a bandage on her neck just to, you know, really entice Connor. And Jeremy shows up with Connor pointing her out to him. So Connor tells him to wait there and follows Meredith into a storage room, but he doesn't see Meredith in there. Instead, he sees Damon and is like, huh, isn't a hospital a bad place for a germaphobe? Calling back to the reason why Damon wouldn't shake his hand in the last episode. But Damon's like, oh, did I say germaphobe? I meant vampire. And Connor pulls out his gun to shoot Damon, but he then gets an arrow shot into his arm. He drops the gun and goes to pick it up, but then he gets another arrow shot into his torso. He sees that the arrows are connected to wire that's connected to a bomb. And Damon's like, stings, doesn't it? So Damon's using his own tricks against him. And Connor is about to push through to pick up his gun. But then Klaus shows up, kicking the gun away from him and says, hello, mate. And Connor, what did you expect? This is what you deserve, Booby the Fool. You should have never trusted Jeremy this easily. Not the brother or the girl who hangs out with the vampire. Next up, we get a very hot and horny, sexy Elena scene. Over at the Salvatore house in Stefan's room, Elena throws him down on the bed, making out with him as this like really like intense, sexy dubstep song starts playing. She comes up breathing heavily and Stefan comes up to kiss her, but she pushes him back down, flashing her fangs. Oh, they're having vamp sex, guys. Like, need I remind you, they still didn't have sex in the last episode, and obviously they didn't have sex of all of season 3. So have they still not had sex? These are the things we need to know because they're gonna explode. You know, like the vampirism heightens it all. Anyway, Stefan Vamp flips Elena over and starts kissing her neck. But when he comes back up, Elena looks at him and she sees Damon's face and she throws him back saying no. And Stefan's like, what's up? Are you okay? And Elena feels like lightheaded and she looks down at her arms, pulls up her sleeves and sees that she has those red veins that Rebecca had pulsing all over her arms. And Stefan remembers that Damon said the hunter had werewolf venom. Yeah, maybe you all should have taken that warning on a little more seriously and not drinking some unknown beer. Next time, BYO. Next time, see the sealed cap open. This is a lesson we can all learn. But once again, Elena and Stefan cannot catch a break. They just can't have sex. Now Elena's hallucinating about Damon. Now she's got werewolf venom in her system. Before she was throwing up. Like, just let them fuck. Back at Rebecca's house, she's sitting at her dressing table looking at the red pulsing veins on her face. And then Matt enters her room and says, you don't look so good. And Rebecca's like, whatever it is, it's not the white oak steak, so it can't kill me. And she's like, I'm surprised you came to my party. And Matt's like, well, I thought about it. You explained why you ran me off the bridge, so the least I could do is explain how I feel. And he walks over to her and says, the truth is, Rebecca, I think you're amazing. You've had 1,000 years to learn, to grow, and to start fresh. And she smiles, actually buying this, but then Matt gives her whiplash because he says, and somehow you've managed to throw it all away. Now you're alone. You're compelling your friends. Your brother hates you. You whine about not finding love, but the reason you don't find love is because you don't deserve it. And he spilled a little bit, but a little bit too hard, because without even thinking, Rebecca sticks her hand impulsively into Matt's chest cavity and pulls out his heart. She's holding his heart as he falls to the floor and dies. Celebrate good times, come on, celebrate, it's celebration. But then Rebecca wakes up, snaps out of it, and it was all her hallucination. Yeah, okay. So Matt's still alive. Freaking God damn it. I'm just kidding. It's just funny. Sometimes people ask why I'm so hard on Matt. He's just fun to hate. I don't think he should have died for clocking Rebecca's tea. Okay, don't come for me. So back at the hospital, Connor is trying to pull the arrow out of his side and Damon tells him, keep it up, buddy. We'll be scraping you off the ceiling. And Connor says, you two are just gonna kill me anyway. But Klaus says, let's not be too hasty. I feel like we're just getting to know each other. These two are having fun. And Damon pulls out the letter from Pastor Young and says, let's start with the basics. Where are you from? What do you know? Maybe you can clue me in on this greater evil, because I fought this guy and he's about as evil as it gets. And Klaus is like, it's true, thank you. I gotta say, I love the duo between Klaus and Damon because they can have a bit of fun, a bit of kiki. With Stefan and Klaus, it's just so much angst, so much longing, so much
thick sexual tension.
Anyway, back to it. Connor says, I'm not telling you anything. You think if you kill me, it's over? There's another waiting to take my place. And Damon's like, see, this is what I like to hear. Vague threats, ominous prophecies, disappearing tattoos. And during this friendly banter, Klaus's face drops when he hears the word tattoo and asks Damon about that, but he says not to bother because you can't see them anyway. And Klaus bends down to Connor and says, there's a lot more to you than meets the eye, isn't there? As Klaus is close to Connor, he tries to stake Klaus, but Klaus vamp speeds, catching his arm and says, nice try, but I'm faster than your average vampire. And he twists Connor's arm. I think he breaks it. It's super cash. But Klaus looks at the etching in Connor's stake and says, you're one of the five. Very ominous. Capital T, capital F, the five. Sounds like a group, not just the number. Connor then says, well, I'm faster than your average hunter. And Damon quickly clocks that he is holding the wires attached to the bomb and he's about to pull them. So Damon vamp speeds out of there and the whole storeroom in the hospital blows up. So Connor is presumably dead. Where's my ex that I fake put on Matt earlier? Because how are you going to survive that? Well, that was pretty easy, to squash that hunter out of the way, huh? Back at the Salvatore house, Elena's laying in Stefan's bed looking awful. The werewolf venom is doing its thing, and it's really gotta suck for her. She just died and came back from the dead a week ago, and now she's dying again. And Stefan is frantically pacing around, leaving Klaus a voicemail saying, where the hell are you, Klaus? And this because we recall Klaus being the original hybrid. His blood is the only cure for werewolf venom. Stefan then sits on the edge of the bed looking at Elena, and there are red veins pulsing throughout her face. She closes her eyes in pain, and when she opens them up again, she hallucinates Damon, and she asks him, why am I thinking about you? Girl, it's pretty obvious because you want him. But hallucination, Damon says, because you're a vampire now and part of you knows you're a lot more like me than you are like him. So this is obviously what Elena's thinking in her subconscious, and she closes her eyes again, and then Klaus enters and Stefan's like, you came? And Klaus is like, yeah, I did. And for the record, one voicemail is just as effective as 9. So Stefan was stressed. Klaus then looks at Elena and asks, what's wrong, love? And Stefan tells her she has werewolf venom in her system, and Klaus smiles. Stefan says, come on, Klaus, you know you're the only one that can heal her. But Klaus wants to really savor this moment and is like, oh, what happens if I were no longer here, If you and your friend succeeded in ridding the world of me, let's play that game
For a moment, shall we? I don't want anything from you.
Klaus was being so sensitive about them trying to kill him when it's totally warranted. Just speaking about Stefan and Elena alone, because he impacted the rest of them a lot as well. He ruined Stefan's relationship with Elena, making Stefan leave town with him in order to save Damon's life from his werewolf bite, giving him his blood. He compelled Stefan to turn off his humanity. He killed Elena in the sun and the moon ritual, and then when she wasn't dead, he used her blood to make hybrids, turning Tyler into one. And when he realized that it was too hard to keep her alive, not once, but twice, he tried to drain her of all of her blood. And to top it all off, he killed her on Jenner and was essentially behind the death of her biological mother and father. So really, the list goes on and on. They had plenty of reason to want to kill you, Klaus. But anyway, Stefan gets pissed off and is like, I'll give you whatever you want. And Klaus is like, I don't want anything from you. But then he goes over to Elena and says, you, on the other hand, love. And he sits on the bed and says, if you had told me a few hours ago, I wouldn't have cared a lick about her dying. But as it turns out, he bites his wrist and feeds his blood to Elena and says, you may be used to me after all. I wonder what he means by that. Back at Rebecca's house, she's laying in bed, sleeping off the werewolf venom as it passes through her body because as an original, it can't kill her. April comes in, knocking on her door, and she's got a bin and she's picking up trash, and she's like, way to bail on your own party. And Rebecca looks confused, like she just woke up from a deep nap and says, I just needed a minute. Did everyone leave? And April's like, yeah. Turns out the deputies weren't exactly happy about the anti-curfew party. Rebecca looks really dumb, like, damn. I can't even throw a good party. And she slept through most of it. And then she asks April what she's still doing there. And April's like, honestly, picking up trash is a hell of a lot better than sitting at home alone thinking about the family I no longer have. Girl. This is so goddamn depressing. So sad. And even Rebecca looks touched. She gets up and goes over to April and says that she can help her look into what happened at the fire at her dad's farmhouse. But April's like, what can you find out that I can't? And Rebecca's like, you'd be surprised. Because she's a vampire, you can compel information. So that's really nice. Finally, Rebecca's gonna get a friend. Yes, it's the depressed girl with the dead dad who just came back to town from boarding school, so she doesn't know anyone, but a friend nonetheless. And it was really interesting this episode. I didn't touch on it with her hallucination that she had with Matt. Her hallucination, Elena's hallucinations, they both are clearly showing what their subconscious is thinking about. Elena is trying to fight her attraction to Damon, and she's ashamed of that and is confused about her feelings. Now that she's a vampire, her feelings for Damon are clearly magnified. And then Rebecca is dealing with those feelings of abandonment from Klaus and Matt not wanting her and her not having any friends and feeling lonely. So it's really interesting, those two scenes, what they told about those two characters and where we started from the beginning to the end. I just love that this episode was such a big Rebecca-Elena beef, episode, but then at the same time they went through do the same thing, you know? Back at the Mystic Falls Hospital post-explosion, it's completely ashy and messed up and there's firemen and police everywhere. Mayor Carol Lockwood joins Damon and confirms that the sniper was inside because that's how she knows Connor as the guy who shot her son at a church in broad daylight in front of the whole town. And Damon's like, yeah, sort of, in tiny little pieces at least. And Carol's like, good. I can cancel the curfew and I'll call off the extra paroles. He then walks away to leave the hospital and walking past Jeremy.
See, I told you I could be a badass.
Badasses don't say that.
Poor Jeremy just wants a big brother. And then Damon goes over to Meredith and tells her, nice job, Doc. But Meredith says, you told me the plan was to lead him to the storage room. And Damon's like, yeah, and we did that. And Meredith's like, you left out the part about blowing up a hospital with patients who are sick and fragile and who don't need things exploding down the hall from them. Well, yes, Meredith, but it is Damon. Did you really think he was being entirely honest and he wasn't going to do something impulsive or reckless? That's kind of on you. Like, when people show you who they are, believe them. But Damon's like, relax, it was contained, nobody got hurt. Come on, buy me a farewell drink. We'll talk about what the hell Klaus meant by the five. But Meredith is fed up and she's no longer being sensitive towards Damon and she says, come on, Damon, you're not leaving town. And I'm not your new partner in vampire crime. Fix things with Stefan and Elena. Don't let your pride leave you all alone. And she leaves. Damon just stands there burned because he's like, damn, am I really that transparent? And yeah, he is. He was clearly trying to turn Meredith into his new drinking buddy and partner in crime like he did a Lark. And Meredith's not going to do that because for one, she can't keep up with Damon's drinking because unlike a Lark, she's not an alcoholic or someone who goes to work drunk. But two, she didn't have a magical ring that brought her back to life from supernatural deaths. And three, let's not forget that even though she dated a Lark for a little bit, he tried to kill her when he went all psycho. So Meredith, I think she realized, you know, I got a little bit too involved in this stuff and I need to take a step back because this is actually the last episode that we see Meredith in, kind of. She comes back for one episode very briefly, but like this is kind of the end of the Meredith character, which is fine. I mean, she was kind of a black character. Back at the Salvatore house, Stefan is having a drink in the parlor room when Caroline arrives. He thanks her for coming and she's like, well, it's not every day you get summoned by a Salvatore. So she sits down with him and asks what's up, and Stefan gives a big sigh like he was letting out a breath that he didn't realize he was holding. Do you remember that line that was always in YA novels? But he really seems to be relaxed with Caroline, and he asks if she remembers what she was like before she turned, and Caroline's like, oh, you mean an insecure control freak? And Stefan chuckles and says, you grew into yourself when you became a vampire. You changed. And Elena, she's changing too. And I want her to be able to enjoy all of it without the guilt and the shame that I went through. And there was a moment today when she did. And when I'm with her, every bone in my body tells me to join her and enjoy it. But if I do, even a little bit, I risk becoming him.
The Ripper.
That is a tough thing for Stefan, is like trying to be here with Elena when she can't even keep down animal blood and like help her, you know, through this transition when like he's still really like recovering from his Ripper binge that was very, very recent, you know, like he's still coming to terms with that. He's still trying to stay in control. It's really difficult for him, you know, and it's a tough spot, but luckily he has Caroline. But anyway, he continues and says, I love her and I don't want to hold her back. And Caroline really knows what he's getting at because she's emotionally intelligent and she understands Stefan. And she says, but you don't know how to be around her and still resist that urge. This is the crux of what's so hard between Stefan and Elena, him helping her with her transition, because he can only really show her how to be a vampire in the way that he can be a vampire, feeding on animal blood. But she can't do that right now. Her body can't keep it down. But Damon can show Elena how, but Stefan doesn't want Damon to show Elena how, because he doesn't want Elena and Damon to, you know, be really close because he's already worried about her feelings towards him. You know, she had a kind of a tough time choosing which brother she wanted at the end of the last season, so his confidence is not exactly at an all-time high. Anyway, Stefan tells Caroline that Damon promised he'd help him stay off the edge. We'll remember that from season 3, episode 16, after Damon forced Stefan to feed on human blood when he was trying to stop. But Stefan continues saying, he and I, we're not in a good place right now. Which, yeah, Damon, you really failed on that promise. And Stefan even says, him and I, we're not in a good place right now. But you, Caroline, you're so good at it, at being a vampire. And Caroline gives Stefan his flowers and says, because of you. I'm good at it, Stefan, because of you. And she can really see that Stefan is struggling in this moment. And I'm getting emotional because I love these two and their friendship so much. She says, Stefan, come to me whenever you want, and I won't let you lose control. They're besties and it's so cute and it feels so right. I've loved Caroline and Stefan ever since season 2, episode 2, Brave New World. I knew something magical was starting in that moment. So over at the Gilbert house, Matt enters and goes to the kitchen where Elena is, and he says, Elena, like if I knew you were going to be at that party, I would have never told Connor about Rebecca. And Elena's like, I already went through this with Jeremy, Matt. It's okay. Like you guys could have never known that I would have been at that party. Like I was even surprised I went. She then looks down at Matt's wrist, kind of indicating like, give me my dinner. I skipped lunch. much. And Matt starts lifting his sleeve. She continues saying, Stefan warned me that I would feel things more powerfully, but Matt, the hatred that I felt today, I almost killed her in front of everyone in the middle of a party. That's not me. At least it didn't used to be me. And Matt's like, yeah, Elena, Rebecca, she kind of deserved it. But Elena continues with her rambling, saying, yeah, but it's not just about Rebecca, it's about my mind. Matt then pulls the band-aid off his wrist, revealing his fang wound, and Elena continues fixated on it, saying, I'm having these thoughts, these terrible thoughts, these violent images, and it's all driven by one
Simple thing, this hunger.
right about now is when you leave. Because then he holds his arm up to Elena, and Elena starts drinking from his wrist, and she's doing it for a while, a lot longer than she did before in the beginning of the episode when she had her breakfast. And Matt's like, Elena, you sure you want to take that much? But she keeps drinking, and he tries to stop her, saying, Elena, you're hurting me. But she ignores that, digging into his wrist. You can hear like cracking, and she grabs him by the neck, vamp speeds him against the kitchen cabinet, choking him, drinking from him, and he's begging her to stop, but she doesn't. And then finally, Damon shows up, pushing Elena off of Matt, and she flashes her fangs, hissing with her red eyes and veins. And Damon tells her, Elena, stop. So Elena finally calms down, and she looks at the ordeal. She looks at Matt, who looks terrified of her, and she starts crying, saying, Matt, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, and she's freaking out. But Damon goes over to Matt and compels him and says, you won't remember any of this. You came over to feed like normal, and then you left. And Matt just leaves with his freaking wrist bleeding. You couldn't have given him some vampire blood to help heal him or something. Maybe give him a little stitches or something. And he's gonna go home and he's gonna be like, damn, my wrist really hurts. Anyways, Damon goes over to Elena to try and help calm her down. She's freaking out, what have I done? And Damon's like, nothing you should be ashamed of. You're a vampire now. You're just gonna have to learn the right way to be one, and I'm gonna teach you. He touches her face a bit intimately, but Elena nods. So she is finally accepting Damon as her teacher, even though she was sort of doing that behind Stefan's back in the previous episode. But this seems to be the direction we're going in, and yeah, maybe it'll be for the best, because she seems to be really struggling to regulate her emotions and her urge to feed. So we'll see where that goes in the next episode. But before then, we have one final scene in this episode, which is in Connor's trailer. He wakes up looking around confused, so he's unfortunately not dead, and he spots Klaus staring at him, and he freaks out and tries to get up, but Klaus pushes him back down on the couch, and Connor's confused, saying, you saved me. And Klaus is like, congratulations, you've just become worth more to me alive than dead. And Connor asks, what did you mean back there when you said I was one of the 5? And Klaus is like, you don't know your own history? Well, let's just say it's made you the most well-protected vampire hunter in town. And that is the end of season 4, episode 3 of the Vampire Diaries, The Rager. Really enjoyed The Rager. I think it was really fun. I think it is a good transition episode between Elena's transition and the hunter. We're really going places here. So clearly we have a lot to discuss in the next episode with regards to Elena now getting her vampire training from Damon, as well as the 5. Who are the 5? This is going to be a big topic in the next episode, clearly, because the next episode, season 4, episode 4 of the Vampire Diaries, is titled The 5. So this episode begins in a flashback in 1110 AD. It's nighttime in a forest with thunder and lightning striking, and there is a witch performing a spell with 5 men circled around her holding swords to the ground. When the witch finishes chanting her spell, she places a goblet lit with fire down and pours it out, which sends 5 streams of fire to 5 men's swords and tattoos spread across each man's body. It's very ominous, very fantasy-core, and this scene ends on the hunter's symbol on the sword and transitions into that same symbol on one of Connor's stakes in present day that Stefan is looking at in the Salvatore house. So Damon's bringing in boxes of files and a bunch of weapons, and Stefan asks him what all this stuff is. He tells him it's stuff that he got from the hunter's RV, may he rest in peace. Of course, we know that he's not dead, but they don't know that. Damon says he took all of his stuff because he's hoping to find a supernatural handbook, and Stefan asks why he's so sure that he's supernatural, and Damon says, well, he's definitely not natural. The guy magically just appears just as someone blows up the entire Founders Council. He's covered in a tattoo that only Jeremy Gilbert of all people can see. Klaus mentioned he had something to do with the 5, and then he kamikazes himself with a bunch of explosives. Does that seem natural to you? And Stefan hones in on one part of that sentence, saying, the 5? What's that? And Damon says that's what he's hoping to find in the first chapter of the Hunter Supernatural Handbook. Which, Damon, when has it ever been that easy? Damon then gets a phone call from Sheriff Liz Forbes, and it's clearly not a good one. Stefan asks, are you seriously not going to tell me what she said? And Damon's like, no, it's a private conversation. Besides,
We're in a fight.
You're in a fight. I'm not in a fight. I'm over it. I've been over it.
the little sibling rivalry. But it's serious, because Damon says you're not still mad at me about Elena, and Stefan says you let her feed on you. I'm always going to be mad at you, but we're not in a fight, Damon. And that's enough for Damon, because he just tells Stefan what Liz told him, which is that there were no remains found at the explosion. So Connor's alive. which doesn't take a rocket scientist. Why did you not go check for like bone fragments or any signs that he was actually in the explosion? Anyway, I'll digress. Damon's not always been the sharpest tool in the shed. He is the sexiest though. Anyway, Damon tells Stefan that he's gonna need him to get on this today because he has to take Elena to college. And Stefan's shocked by this. It's the first he's hearing of this, which is crazy because it's his girlfriend. And Damon gives him some more clarification, saying that he's teaching Elena how to feed. She needs to learn snatch, eat, erase more now than ever. And Stefan's about to disagree and get into it with Damon, but Damon's like,
we're not in a fight, remember?
And he leaves. And yes, to those Vampire Diaries veteran fans, this is the episode, one of the most iconic episodes in the Vampire Diaries, where Damon and Elena go to college and we get the college party. So this is gonna be a fun one. But Stefan's storyline with the five and all that kind of stuff and the flashbacks is very interesting too. I think this is a really, really solid, great episode. And I'm just excited to discuss it because it's a banger. I always look forward to it. So over in the woods, Elena and Stefan are doing their vampire training. And Elena explains herself to Stefan, saying, I know it's crazy, but I almost killed Matt last night. Call it doppelganger curse or whatever, but I can't drink animal blood. I can't drink from a blood bag. I can only drink from the vein. Then Stefan shoots an arrow at Elena and she ducks quickly and he tells her that was slow. He almost got her and she pulls the arrow out of the tree and says, well, that's why we're not using wooden arrows for hunter defense class. And she then throws the arrow at Stefan, but he quickly dodges it and we don't see where the arrow goes. It just like flies through the woods. So like imagine if that hit like some innocent hiker or a poor defenseless woodland creature, but they just giggle, throwing their arrows recklessly around the woods. Stefan asks, what about Caroline? She's a genius at self-control. But Elena says she's too good. She doesn't understand how hard it is. And you, well, I know what being around too much blood does to you, so I can't put you through that. Stefan then vamp speeds to Elena, going behind her, holding an arrow to her chest, and says, so I guess that leaves Damon, huh? She grabs his arm and flips him over the ground, pinning him down with the arrow to his neck, and says,
Don't be jealous. You know I wish it could be you.
Stefan says, fine, you wish it could be me. And he pushes his way back up to Elena, smiling as she puts her arms around him and says, we're crashing Bonnie's trip to Whitmore. The professor that took over her Graham's classes there, he invited her. So we know that's part of the reason they're going to college. They're not just randomly going to college to feed on people. And Elena can see that Stefan's still upset, so she says, you're the one who's getting me through this, no matter who teaches me how to feed. Well, that's not entirely true, because most of Stefan's training with Elena has been a fail, and most of Damon's training with Elena has been a success. So she's just saying that to make him feel better. Stefan then vamp speeds Elena against a tree and says, just be careful, alright? The blood, the feed, it's easy to get caught up in it. And Elena promises him she'll be careful and gives him a kiss. And I really love this scene so much. It's so cute seeing them practicing their fighting and just fun to see Stefan and Elena being vampires together. It is really sad for Stelena though, because you can clearly see Elena slipping away from Stefan and going towards Damon. And I kind of just wish Stefan put his foot down here and was like, I don't think this is a good idea to get caught up with Damon in this. Like, there's got to be another way. Let's, talk to Caroline about this. Like, the combination of having Stefan and Caroline help train Elena with her transition, I think would be stellar and perfect. But at the same time, you can kind of get the logic because Elena can't feed on animal blood. That's exclusively what Stefan drinks. And she also can't feed on blood bags, which is exclusively what Caroline drinks. So that kind of leaves her up to the snatch, eat, erase method, where, you grab a human, feed on them, you don't kill them, and then you compel them to forget. And the only vampire who successfully does that is Damon. So she's kind of out of options. And of course, let's not forget, Stefan's all about respecting Elena's choices. That's what got her killed. We then go over to the Mystic Girls where Matt is bussing tables because, remember, he's the only character with a job. Rebecca then shows up and puts keys down in front of him, saying that it's the keys to his new truck. Parked outside, paid for and insured, everything without the little red bow. This is a new level of delusion for Rebecca, because do you really think that buying him a new truck is going to make up for the fact that you drove his off of the bridge, almost killing him and killing his best friend? Well, clearly. And Matt tells her off, saying if that's your idea of an apology, you should probably give it to Elena. She's the one that you killed. And he walks away, leaving Rebecca in his dust and leaving her to see that Klaus was sitting at the other end of the bar listening to this whole interaction while having a midday glass of red wine, which is a strange thing to drink in the middle of the day, but I digress, he's fancy like that. And Klaus tells her that she's trying too hard, which she is. It's kind of pathetic, girl. You need to pack it up, pick it up, and stand up. Like, why is she so into Matt? There's got to be another white, mediocre high school football player out there for her. Why him? Anyway, Rebecca says to Klaus, last I heard you were leaving town forever. And Klaus walks over to her and says, well, I was. But then I thought to myself, how can I leave when my sister, so clearly desperate for love and affection, is left here bribing the help? He gagged her so severely, and he continues to wipe the floor with Rebecca all episode long. Rebecca asks, what do you want, Nick? I thought that I was dead to you.
From this moment on, you're not my family. Things change, Rebecca.
But Klaus says, I've stumbled upon something I think might be of interest to you. And Rebecca says she doubts it, but Klaus pulls her in by saying, what if I told you the Brotherhood of the Five still exists? Rebecca, shocked and looks clearly interested, and Klaus is like, and just like that, bygones, come on love, work to do. One thing about Klaus, he got the nerve, the audacity, and the wherewithal, because he just assumes that Rebecca Rebecca's gonna drop everything and come with him. By everything, I mean he could have saved her from being kidnapped but chose not to.
You left me.
I think it's time for us to move on.
He then choked her, told her she was nothing to him, and snapped her neck. And that was just recently. So naturally, Rebecca doesn't move and says, we don't have anything to do. There is no we. I don't care about the five, and I don't care about you. And obviously she doesn't mean this, but she's clearly upset and she wants an apology. But when it comes to class, you're gonna be waiting a while for that. So he just says, as you wish, and walks off. We then go over to Whitmore College, where Damon parks his car in the middle of the quad, definitely illegally. Elena gets out the car with Bonnie and asks if she's okay with this, and Bonnie's like, yeah, I mean, if I could spell you out of wanting blood, I would, but I can't. So better you're doing this now than at freshman orientation. And Elena's being all negative, like, something tells me college isn't in my future anymore. And that's stupid for two reasons. Number one, you come from a rich white family in the South and you have a tragic backstory, so I don't think it'd be that hard to afford college and have a great personal essay. And number two, the most obvious one, you're a vampire. You can compel yourself into any university you want. You want to go to Harvard, you want to go to Princeton, you want to go to whatever other popular university in America, go. Sometimes I feel like these vampires forget that they could like solve most of their problems with compulsion. They're not using it enough. Damon tells her, oh, stop with the pity party. If I can go to college, then you can go to college. And Bonnie's surprised, saying, you went to college? Well, yeah, girl, it's not like he's gonna go to high school. He damn near looks 35, and canonically he was turned at age 25. Not to mention that Damon, unlike Stefan, likes to have fun, so he's gonna go to college parties. But Damon says, oh yeah, sure, plenty of times. I always had a thing for sorority girls.
You're disgusting.
And then they all walk away as Damon turns around to check out a girl that looks exactly like Elena. Long brown hair, Henley. Pretty obvious what his type is. So this next scene takes place in a lecture hall, and we get to meet the professor that has taken over Sheila Bennett, Bonnie's Graham's class at the university. She was teaching a, I always forget what it's called. It's like not a supernatural, occult study class, which I don't know what kind of job you're going to get with that. I mean, in this universe, we have one example of someone who did their thesis in occult studies, and it was Isabel, who then became a vampire and died as a vampire. So I guess that's what you get if you study occults. But anyway, this guy, we will learn later in the episode, his name is Atticus Shane. New character alert. This character is, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people find him annoying. I don't. I feel like he's actually kind of smart, but then he becomes dumb, and he's just like kind of funny, but he's also creepy and he's manipulative. I don't know. I don't hate him, but I also don't like him. But I don't dread him when he comes on, you know? It's not like Jules from season 2 and Brady, like that werewolf crew, hate them. I don't mind Atticus Shane. You know, he drives a lot of the plot. I can't really talk too much about him without spoiling it. But anyway, he's giving a lecture. He's talking about like witches and history, and he has like a projector slideshow. And then Bonnie, Elena, and Damon quietly enter. They sit down, and Elena's like, oh my god, is that the professor? He's kind of, and Bonnie's like, hot. And then Damon rolls his eyes because in his head he's clearly thinking, I'm way hotter than that guy, and you guys never say I'm hot. So Professor Shane goes on in his lecture saying, now in reality, or in this reality at least, witches have appeared across every culture in history. They're the architects of the supernatural, responsible for everything that goes bump in the night, from ghosts to vampires to doppelgangers. Our gang looks a little shook by this because doppelgangers isn't exactly a super common supernatural creature in lore, you know? But in this world it is. And Damon makes a little jab whispering, who is this guy, Wikipedia? And Elena chuckles, which this is how you know she likes him because that joke was not funny at all. And Bonnie tells them to shush, but they keep talking, rudely so, and Elena's asking Damon, what happens if I'm a ripper? And Damon's like, you're not. And she's like, well, what happens if I am? And he's like, well, then pick someone and we'll find out. So Elena starts scanning the different students in the lecture hall, and she hones in on one guy that looks super spaced out, and Damon says, stoner guys are no good to grab. They're too paranoid and you don't want the extra buzz. So is this kind of confirmation that if you feed on a human who is like high or drunk, that you feel those effects? Because that's really interesting. And that makes sense because I felt like whenever Damon was feeding on Vicky, he looked like he was really high and he was like really crazy. And, you know, Vicky was canonically a drug addict, so that makes sense. This opens up a larger question. I wonder if vampires can be affected by drugs. Well, surely they can because Damon gets drunk, so they can get drunk. It just takes a lot more alcohol. Wait, but if they get drunk, can they throw up from drinking too much? Surely not. Can they get hungover? Well, I've never thought about this that much. I mean, I think I've had conversations about do they poo and pee, but like this is a whole different ballgame. Don't even open up with the do they poo and pee thing because they can eat human food, so that just like dumbfounds me. And they can drink liquids that aren't blood. I can't get into this right now. Debate in the comments down below. Do they pee and poo? My answer is yes. And do they get drunk or high? And my answer is yes. But surely it isn't the same effect as a human. Okay, I need to stop. Anyway, Elena then looks at a girl who's vigorously taking notes, and Damon says, now she's fun-sized, but a little too alert. Geeky girls are inherently suspicious of anyone who's nice to them. Kind of rude. He then points out this girl on her phone and says, what you want is the little blonde. Pretty girl, self-absorbed, easily flattered. You just have to separate her from the pack and make your move. Which is very interesting because this is basically what Damon did to Caroline in the first season. Caroline in the first season, before she was a vampire and had her evolution, you could describe as a pretty little blonde girl who was self-absorbed and easily flattered. And he separated her from her group, like he compelled her, like he manipulated her. So very interesting that this is Damon's tactic and explains why he did what he did to Miss Caroline. But he was mistaken on that one. She was the wrong girl. Okay, anyway. So as Damon and Elena are whispering about all of this, Professor Shane then calls them out in front of the whole class saying, am I interrupting you guys, or is it maybe the other way around? And Damon says, sorry, I was just saying how much I love witches. And Shane says under his breath,
Yeah, you and me both, brother.
okay, it's kind of clear off the get-go this guy is like creepy and like really obsessed with witches, so it's not looking too good the path Bonnie's going down. So over at Klaus's mansion, he enters a room where he has Connor, the hunter, tied to a wooden slab. It's very theatrical and biblical looking. He then notices someone's there and says, looks like I'll have to beef up the hybrid security detail. And we see that it's Stefan who says, I was gonna take him, but I figured you went through so much trouble to tie him up in your red room of pain, so what did you get out of him? And Klaus tells him, not nearly enough. He's mum about the council fire, and he isn't saying anything about the greater evil we're supposed to be shivering over. What brings you snooping? Stefan says he can't say anything in front of Connor because as Klaus probably knows, he can't be compelled, which I don't really know how they found this out because we haven't seen anybody try to compel him, but maybe Stefan read it in Connor's research that Damon stole from his RV. Anyway, once again, I'm getting too caught up on the details, but Connor tells them, like he said earlier, he doesn't know anything, but Klaus says, lucky for you, I know plenty. And he closes the door on Connor and goes to sit down to have a chat with Stefan. So Stefan gets straight to the chase saying, Damon says you knew something about this guy. I should have figured you were up to something when you healed Elena from that werewolf poison without asking for anything in return. Yes, Stefan, thank you for finally coming to the party and using your brain. Stefan continues saying, so who is this guy? And who's the five? Klaus doesn't really budge at first though because he wants to make Stefan work for the answers, but ultimately I think he's also just happy to be hanging out with his bestie and crush Diffussy. So Klaus says, fine, you might actually be good at persuading my sister to cooperate. He then goes on with his narration that's going to lead us into flashbacks saying, the Brotherhood of the Five was a group of highly skilled vampire hunters. We crossed paths with them in the 12th century in Italy. My siblings and I had followed the Normans as they conquered the south, feeding and turning people as we went, but with the bloodshed came exposure. So this would have been when the originals were around 100 years old, and besides all the flashbacks in season 3 episode 8 where we learned their origin story and saw how they became vampires, this is the early flashback we've seen of them thus far, so that's really fun. So we get transported into a flashback in Italy in 114 AD, so that would be 4 years later than the flashback we saw in the beginning of the episode. We see Klaus walking with Elijah to a stage where there are a bunch of people gathered, and it's really nice to see Elijah again because we haven't seen him since the end of season 3, and we don't see him for a while this season. But anyway, we see them with their long hair and their era-appropriate attire. They kind of look like they stepped out of the Sims medieval video game, if I'm honest, but I love the looks. I love a flashback moment, you know that. But anyway, back to the people gathered around the stage. So there's this really sexy buff guy on stage, and this is a character whose name we later learn is Alexander, so that's fun, Luke Alexander. That's my name, if you didn't get that. But anyway, so this character is one of the 5 that we saw in the beginning of the episode. So we know that he's one of the hunters, one of the Brotherhood of the Five. So we'll learn about that as we go on. So exciting. So much lore drops. Anyway, so sexy buff vampire hunter slayer is on the stage with people gathered all around him, and he has 4 vampires staked to poles. We know they're vampires because they're grey and veiny. And he says, these demons live among you, passing as human, so witness with your own eyes. And he opens a wooden box that was on the middle of the stage to reveal a vampire inside who starts burning from the sun and sets on fire, screaming as he watches. And Elijah and Klaus are watching this whole ordeal. Elijah says he's putting on quite the show, but Klaus isn't phased, saying, oh, I could eat him for sport. And Elijah goes on saying, still, you should heed the warning. Between you here and Cole in the east, you have not been discreet. Stories of the original vampires are spreading, and Klaus says, let them. I welcome such infamy. Even back then, he wanted the big reputation. Big reputation. Ooh, I got some big enemies. Anyway, back to it. Klaus continues saying, if you're worried about discretion, perhaps you should wrangle our sister. And we then see that Rebecca is flirting with the hunter, and he kisses her hands, and they walk arm in arm away. So we learned back then that even Rebecca had peculiar taste in men, because why would you date a vampire hunter when you were a vampire? I think she just loves toxic romances. Anyway, side note, I just want to say in these flashbacks, Claire Holt as Rebecca looks so stunning. She's got these bust down inches in her hair, like her hair is down to her booty crack, and it is so beautiful with like pearls and stuff in it. Like she just looks gorgina. Like this is honestly my favorite look from her. One thing about Claire Holt is she slays a period piece look. She always looks so good. She's really got like the face and the vibe for it. Anyways, back in present day, Stefan goes on saying, so these hunters have been around for 900 years, and Klaus says apparently, but our friend in the other room is the first one I've seen since then. Kind of makes you wonder where they've all been these years. Stefan confirms so Rebecca had a thing with one of them, and Klaus, very much annoyed, says, oh, she didn't just have a thing, she fell in love with him. And he told her all his secrets, which I will gladly share with you, provided for me you do one thing. Get Rebecca over here. She's being stubborn and hateful. I need to make peace with her because I wanted to give us some very important information about the hunter, which she won't do unless she believes we've made up. So clearly he doesn't actually care about apologizing to Rebecca or making peace with her. Just classic Klaus emotional manipulation. Stefan asks Klaus what's in it for him, and Klaus says, just get her here and I'll tell you. Oh, and Stefan, trust me when I say this, that hunter in there holds the answers to all your prayers. Ooh, mysterious. So over at the girl, April is awkwardly sitting all alone, and Matt goes over to her asking if she wants like more water or something, and she awkwardly tells him like, no, I'm good. By the way, I'm not just sitting here all alone like the loser new girl. I'm here with my friend. And then Rebecca slides back into the booth like, ugh, sorry, family drama. And Matt's like, you two are friends? And Rebecca's like, is it so hard to believe that I would have one? And Matt's like, yeah, it is. Rebecca, you really laid him up with that one. You made it too easy. And Matt tells her, by the way, I'm keeping the truck. And he walks away, as he should. As he should. I mean, it's good he tried to have some pride, but you can't have too much. When you have a deadbeat mom and you're living alone paying your bills with a busboy's salary, you're not going to be able to afford a truck, so might as well take this one. As Matt walks away, April's watching him, checking him out, and Rebecca's like, hey, he's off limits, girl. I've got dibs. Girl, I don't know if you could have dibs on someone who hates your guts. And also, what is with everybody wanting a slice of Matt Donovan? The writers are really trying to make us like him, and it's not happening. Suddenly, Stefan then slides into the booth and compels April not to remember any of this, and he tells Rebecca, Klaus wants me to fake peace with you so you'll talk about the 5. And Rebecca tells him, yeah, I bet. Don't help him. He'll just betray you. That's what he does. And Stefan says, all right, forget him. Help me instead. And Rebecca's like, why? You hate me more than he does. And Stefan says, because I'm going to figure out what he's up to. And plus, I can give you the one thing that he won't, a clean slate. Look, I'm not saying I'm willing to forgive you for everything that you did to Elena, but I am willing to set it aside and start over. Rebecca asks Stefan why he would do that, and he says, because you're obviously not leaving town anytime soon, and I'm just looking for a way that we can all get along. Plus, you can't be too happy wandering around school with no friends. Clocked her. And Rebecca's like, well, what happens if I don't care what you or anyone else thinks of me? And Stefan digs a bit deeper and says, well, I'm pretty sure you care what Matt over there thinks, so maybe I can talk to him about a clean slate too. This approach by Stefan is really smart because he knows it's a waste of time trying to get Rebecca to forgive Klaus. So he already starts on her good graces by calling out Klaus's BS and also offering Rebecca something in return for her help that doesn't really cost him that much and that he doesn't really have to fulfill. Who's to say he has to really do that, you know? Finally, it's pretty clear that Rebecca's desperate for popularity and friends, and most importantly, Matt's affection. The only person who's willing to hang out with her is the new girl who just got to town that knows nothing about her and has no other prospects for friends because she herself has the pyromaniac murderous dead dad. So overall, this emotional manipulation and tactic is so smart of Stefan because the opportunity to have friends, popularity, and a boyfriend is just way too much for Rebecca to pass on, which is stupid for her, but good for Stefan because she plays right into his hand. And Stefan really is on his emotional manipulation-ish this episode, making him and Klaus the perfect pair. Which is really fun because we got to see Damon and Klaus as a pair last episode, and now we get to see Klaus and Stefan as a pair this episode. Whereas Damon and Klaus is a bit more fun and silly goofy banter, Stefan and Klaus is deep emotional turmoil and manipulation. Back at Whitmore College in the quad, Damon and Elena are walking behind that blonde girl from Professor Shane's lecture, and Damon whispers to Elena, she's young and healthy, she'll heal up like a charm, just keep your eye on the ball. But Elena tells him it's not a game, Damon, and he's like, whatever, just go like we practiced. So Elena goes and catches up to the girl and is like, you're in my anthro class, right? And the girl's like, I guess. And Elena's like, I totally spaced and forgot to get the reading list. Do you have it? So the girl checks her phone for the reading list, and Elena grabs her wrist and starts compelling her, saying, this isn't gonna hurt, don't scream. But she then sees a picture with a little girl on the girl's phone, and she's like, who's that? And the girl's like, my baby sister. And Elena's like, get out of here, go back to class. And she compels her, so the girl leaves. And Damon's like, what the hell, Elena? And Elena's like, I'm sorry, like I just saw the picture. And Damon's like, everybody is someone's uncle or father or camp counselor or Bible study teacher. Elena, you don't know these people. Why do you care? And Elena's like, I care because it's still me. I still have the same feelings, Damon. Sorry if that spoils your master plan to turn me into some super vampire. Okay, girl, what did you expect? I mean, most humans have families. Her sister's gonna be fine. Her baby sister's gonna get to see her big sister, you know, when she comes back home to do her laundry. Like, it's not a big deal. It's not that deep. Damn, Damon's really got his work cut out for him. Bonnie then rejoins them and asks them what's going on, and Damon says, "Oh, nothing. Elena's just educating me on the importance of feelings." Elena ignores him and asks if Bonnie was able to speak to the professor, and she says she did for a moment, and he told her that he has some of her grams' stuff, and he's gonna go dig it up for her out of his office and give it to her. And Elena smiles like, you know, that's nice. Bonnie's getting to reconnect with her grams after the traumatic experience she had. And Bonnie then hands Elena a flyer that she found, and it's for a murder house frat party that night. And Damon's like, nice, this answers all of our problems. A frat party, douche central, which is why you'll be eating very well tonight. So what should we go as, victims or killers? So we're gearing up, guys, for that frat party. If you know, you know. So back at Klaus's mansion, he's taunting Connor, who's still chained up, when Rebecca shows up with Stefan and asks if this is a trick. How can Klaus know if he's one of the five? Where's his bloody tattoo? And Klaus is like, the tattoo's not visible on this lot like they were in the Lost. And he walks out the room, closing Connor in there, and says, let's all eat. So we're gonna get a little dinner party with Klaus, Stefan, and Rebecca. One thing about Klaus is he knows how to throw a mean dinner party. And just like in season 3 when he had his dinner party with Stefan, Damon, and Elijah, this time he has spared no expense with an elaborate tablescape that he just happened to organize that day. And he's got his compelled human waitresses and says, I could kiss the council for burning up all the vervain in town. They've made my life so much easier. Which, yeah, that was pretty dumb of them, but the council is not exactly known for their smarts. He then looks over at Rebecca, who's not eating, and says,
Rebecca, love, eat your veggies.
and she says, no, not until you apologize. Which, girl, why? You know he's not gonna mean it, but he plays into it and says, for which indiscretion? There have been so many. And Rebecca says, you broke my neck. And Klaus says, because you threw away Elena's blood, so I can't make any more hybrids. And Rebecca's like, yeah, well, because you took me for granted. And Klaus is like, that's what big brothers do, sweetheart. And Stefan cuts in like, oh, can I just name about a million other people I'd rather be having dinner with right now? Because you know he's so over their bullshit. He has to deal with them in the 20s and in season 3 when he was off with Klaus, so he is not having a good time and is trying to get to the point. So Klaus gives in and says to Rebecca, all right, fine, I'm sorry. I often forget how delicate you are. Forgive me? And Rebecca says she'll take it under consideration. And Stefan's like, okay, cool. Now that we got that out of the way, why don't you go ahead and tell me about Rebecca's hunter? And Klaus says, right, Alexander, nice chap forgoing the obvious issues. He was looking for creatures of the night, which is why we felt quite safe around him wearing our daylight rings. So this transports us back to another flashback 900 years ago in Italy, 114 AD. By the way, I have added a red line from Rebecca to Alexander, which is very painful because it was so far apart, but we gotta keep this mind map updated. Anyway, so they're all having a bougie lunch together, and Alexander says, I'm unaccustomed to such luxuries. And Elijah says, well, it's the least we could do to repay you for opening our eyes to the truth. We're curious to hear more about your order, your crusade. And Alexander goes on saying, we are but 5 men, bound by fire and the last breath of a dying witch to a single cause, the destruction of all vampires. And Klaus asks how he hopes to achieve this, and Alexander tells him, well, we have the ultimate weapon that no vampire can survive. And back in present day, Stefan's like, oh, so that's what this is all about? Some weapon? Which, yeah, kind of anticlimactic. We already have the indestructible white oak stake that could kill an original vampire and therefore an entire vampire bloodline. So what could be a bigger deal than that? But anyway, Rebecca goes on saying, not just any weapon. And Klaus says, Rebecca, love, don't get ahead of the story. Because, you know, he wants to spend as much time hanging out with Stefan as possible, so he's dragging that story along. And Stefan asks how a weapon could be the answer to all of his prayers. And Klaus and Rebecca look at each other with a knowing look and don't say anything. And Stefan's like, look, why don't we just skip the theatrics and get straight to the point? But Klaus says, not quite yet, because in order to find this weapon, we need to solve a puzzle, which seems to have disappeared. And Stefan's like, what puzzle? Like, it's literally like a treasure hunt reality game show at this point. But Stefan realizes that Klaus is referring to Connor's tattoo, and Klaus says, yes, it's a map leading us to its treasure. But Rebecca says, fat lot of good it's gonna do if we can't see the bloody thing. And Klaus is like, well, we can't, but someone can. And you see, the hunter was so eager to get to the bottom of his mystery tattoo that he mentioned that there was only one other person who could see them. And we all know who that is because then one of Klaus's hybrids enters with none other than Jeremy Gilbert. And one thing about Jeremy, he's gonna get kidnapped. Isabel's kidnapped Jeremy, Catherine's kidnapped Jeremy, and now Klaus has kidnapped Jeremy. Anyway, back to it. Stefan vamp speeds over to Jeremy because he's like, guys, you can't keep kidnapping Elena's brother. Like, this is not okay. But Klaus vamp speeds in front of him and says, I wouldn't. You see, lucky for us, Jeremy here is a little bit of an artist. But Jeremy's like, I'm not helping you with anything. And then Klaus looks at his hybrid, who pulls Jeremy's Gilbert ring off and throws it to Klaus and says, I'm afraid you are. And he smiles, and that's the end of that scene, which, like, honestly, what is the point of this goddamn Gilbert ring that's supposed to protect you from a supernatural death if everybody knows about it and it's so easy for them to take it off? Like, at this point, get a body piercing in a place that no one's gonna look, like melt down the ring and pierce it to your body somewhere so that people don't know about it and they can't take it off. I mean, they could take it off, but like, there's a lesser chance. Like, this Gilbert ring is pointless at this point. Also, why is he still wearing it after it made a lark black out and kill people? You know what else I just thought of? He could melt down the ring, mix it into tattoo ink, and then get it tattooed on himself. That would be tea. So it's nighttime now back at Whitmore College for the murder frat house party. Elena, Damon, and Bonnie arrive all dressed up, and Elena and Bonnie both have like a fake neck slit, and Damon has a top hat. A guy meets him at the entrance saying, "Yo, I'm Frankie, an unassuming serial killer," aka he was too lazy to get a costume. Even Damon and Bonnie and Elena didn't, they find out they were coming a couple hours ago. Anyway, Damon's like, "I'm Jack, and these are the two lovely ladies I just rippered." Obviously a Jack the Ripper reference, but also a funny nod to Stefan the Ripper. Anyway, the frat boy welcomes them in and tells them that there's free Bloody Marys till midnight, which is really weird. Like, I've never had a Bloody Mary before because I think they're disgusting. Isn't it just like vodka and tomato juice and celery? It's supposed to be like a hair of the dog hangover cure that you have at brunch, so really gross. But, you know, gotta be on the murder theme. But you could have just done like bloody cocktails, like dye stuff red, like a I don't know, like a Cosmo. Anyway, Bonnie looks up to see Professor Shane, and Damon's like, "Oh, isn't that professor creepy?" And she's like, "He's not creepy," which, yeah, Bonnie, he is. What is this professor doing at a frat party with a bunch of drunk students, some of which are under the legal drinking age? Not that I really care about that because there's always underage drinking in American film and TV, but like, he is a creep for being there. Let's not get it twisted. And I do want to acknowledge a bit of Damon's hypocrisy here because he is canonically a 25-year-old man. That's the age he was when he turned and the age that he presents himself as in Mystic Falls. And he spent a lot of time at high school parties with drunk underage students and a lot of high school dancers. And he's got this little thing going on with a senior in high school. So pot kettle, you know? But anyway, Bonnie says she's gonna go over and talk to Shane, so she leaves. Damon and Elena are looking at the crowd, and he says, "Inebriated sleazeballs all covered in blood. Come on, pick one." So she looks around and she spots a guy who drops something in a girl's drink while she's not looking, and is like, "I think I found one." And Damon's like, "Roofie guy? Nice." Which, I mean, this is a good thing that Elena is gonna go hopefully put a stop to this, maybe warn the girl about her drink. But no, she doesn't, because she goes over to the guy who roofied the other girl's drink and bumps into him and is like, "Ooh, I'm sorry, drink." And she offers him a drink and then walks away flirtily smiling at him, and he follows her. The other girl looks like pissed, and Elena just didn't even tell her that the guy dropped a roofie in her drink. She didn't take the drink away from her, so that girl is still gonna get roofied. So Elena's vigilante shit doesn't exactly work out. Anyway, roofie guy follows Elena to a private area and tries to kiss her, but she pushes him off of her against a wall and compels him, saying, "You're not gonna make a sound." She then bites his neck and drinks his blood. Damon enters and tells her, "Now remember, the idea is not to kill him," but Elena keeps drinking and starts getting a little aggressive with it, and Damon tells her to stop, so she does and pulls away from the guy, compels him to forget about this, and then lets him walk away with a bleeding neck, which honestly deserved for what he was going to do. And also, it is a party where everyone's covered in fake blood, so it's the perfect cover-up. He honestly improved his costume. But anyway, Damon asks Elena how she feels, and she smiles, saying that she feels good, and he looks really hopeful and kind of turned on, and Elena throws her arms around Damon and whispers in his ear, "I want more." It's a bit strange seeing her behave like this because it's not really typical Elena behavior, and she was so apprehensive about feeding on humans. So she seems to be enjoying this a lot, and comparing her reaction here to when she was going to feed on that student earlier, maybe she feels better about feeding on bad people. You know, maybe she's like on her Edward Cullen-ish, you know, like in Breaking Dawn when he would only feed on bad humans. Except she's letting them live and continuing them to do bad things. I don't have time to get into the morals and ethics of fictional vampires feeding on humans. So back in Klaus's mansion, in the room where he's keeping Connor, Jeremy is sketching his tattoo, and Connor asks why he sent him up at the hospital yesterday, and Jeremy says, "You were trying to hurt people who are important to me." And Connor's disgusted by this, like, important to you? That vampire just threatened you. Which, yeah, shocker, Connor, not all of Jeremy's relationships to the vampires are the same. Which maybe you would have found out if you bothered to get to know Jeremy instead of blindly trusting him just because he can see your tattoo. Because he just goes on to say, "I don't understand how you can see the tattoo if you're a vampire sympathizer." And Jeremy gets a little sassy with him and is like, "What exactly do you understand? Because a couple days ago you seemed to have all the answers, and now you know Jack. Where did this tattoo come from? Why am I the only one who can see it?" So Connor takes a deep breath and finally shares some info because he's been very tight-lipped with everyone else, but it makes sense that out of anyone he's going to share this with, it's going to be Jeremy, who he thinks is a potential hunter. So he gives us his lore and says, "Years ago, I met someone with a mark. Claimed he had this intense desire to kill vampires, like it was ingrained in his DNA. He told me the same thing I told you. If I could see the mark, I was a potential." Jeremy asks who he was, and Connor tells him, "Just some guy I served in Iraq with," which, by the way, we never learn who this is, so throwaway info. He says, "I lost track of him, and then one day the tattoo just showed up on me. It started on my hand, but then the more vampires I killed, the more it spread, like it was trying to tell me something. I just don't know why. So it's a pretty fair assumption that this guy probably died in war. So when he died, Connor, as a potential hunter, then took his place. So that stands to logistically reason that if Connor dies, then Jeremy will take his place because he's a potential and they've made contact. I also think that this newer crop of hunters, unlike the Brotherhood of the Five from the, original inception of the whole concept back in 114 AD, these current day ones must have evolved over time to have their tattoos be hidden and be private so that vampires can't target them. So that's really interesting. And maybe after the first crop of hunters died, then the tattoos were like, only visible to potential hunters, and then the current hunters would be inclined to train the potential hunters, maybe they were compelled to in their DNA, and then it just continued so that there would always be active hunters within the Brotherhood of the Five. That part of it isn't really explained, but we can kind of deduce that. And this is a really interesting episode for the season because we're building up the hunter lore a lot more. Like, Connor is not just a regular vampire hunter like Alark was when he came to town in season 1, which is good because I do remember when I was first watching this season and Connor was introduced and I was like, okay, so he's a villain, but he's just a vampire hunter. Like, who cares? We've had plenty of those. But there's a ton of lore with these hunters that just goes places, and it continues through this episode and throughout the rest of the season and just builds on top of each other. So it's a really exciting story, actually. So back at the dinner party, Stefan asks Klaus to tell him more about the tattoo, and Klaus goes on to say, my sister Suda was unwilling to tell us anything. Rebecca, however, was more than willing to investigate. Isn't that right, sister? So we go back to another flashback where Rebecca is in bed with Alexander. So she's straddling him and kissing him. She pulls back, touching the tattoo on his chest, and asks how he reads these symbols. Alexander tells her, the map took my brothers and I years to translate. The sword is the key to reading it. He pulls out the sword we saw in the opening scene of the episode. He then asks Rebecca, have you considered my offer to come with me when I leave to follow the map? And Rebecca smiles and says, I have, and I would like that very much. He smiles back at her and kisses her, but when Rebecca comes up, she notices a dagger and ash that we as the audience, having watched Klaus and all the original squabbles, know all too well. It's on his nightstand, and she asks what it is nervously. It's kind of unsure whether she actually knows what it is or not. This could be like the first time that the originals encounter the dagger, and Alexander takes the dagger and dips it in the ash and says, this is a very special weapon for a very special kind of vampire. When my brotherhood has achieved its destiny, those monsters will cease to exist. Until then, we have the daggers. And this all sounds very similar to Esther's plan of creating a ultimate weapon to destroy the vampire species. So who knows? I mean, we could be asking the question, is Esther behind the Brotherhood of the Five? And maybe from the other side, she's brought them back to their mission after she failed with Lark. Could Esther be behind this? Or could it be someone new? I don't know. Let's find out. We're getting a lot of answers, but it's also making us ask a lot more questions. Back to it, Rebecca then says something really stupid, like, do you really believe that they're all so evil they must be put down? Which is just such an indication to someone who's paranoid about vampires that you're a sympathizer, which means you possibly could be one. Because then Alexander says, let us not speak of such things. Let us do this. And he kisses Rebecca and says, and this, and this, and he's kissing her all over the place, distracting her, because we see that he has the dagger and ash behind her, and he stabs her, and she goes out. So Rebecca, you'll become all too familiar with this dagger. I mean, this was kind of the origin story of Rebecca really, losing it with the dagger and meeting her maker. And also just going to show us how ridiculous Rebecca's relationship history is and how she just always chooses the wrong guys. Like, why, as a vampire, would you date a vampire hunter? Make it make sense, Rebecca. Stand up. It's like in present day, she's trying to date Matt, who canonically hates vampires. Back in present day, Klaus says, my sister's boyfriend threw a slumber party that night. He and his brothers put us all down. Elijah, Colt, Finn, and me. And Rebecca's like, how was I supposed to know? Which does kind of support the theory that maybe this was the first time they'd experienced with the daggers. But Klaus clearly still holds resentment onto this because he raises a glass and says, cheers to my sister's uncanny ability to choose men. Stefan clocks some critical info though and says to Klaus, I thought the daggers didn't work on you because of your werewolf side. And Klaus smiles and says, they don't. So back in the flashback, Rebecca wakes up to see Klaus in front of her, covered in blood, and she asks what happened. And Klaus is like, why don't you ask him? And he moves aside to see Alexander with a sword through his chest, pinned against the wall. And Klaus is like, only you can't because I've cut out his tongue. Well, that, yes, and also he is dead, so he does have his little X there, because he's been dead for 900 years. And Rebecca's like, Nick, I had no idea. Which, to be fair, like, them being originals, like, they know they can't be killed by anything but White Oak, and it's completely been removed. Like, if they didn't have the daggers, you know, maybe she thought, I like him. Yeah, he's a vampire hunter, but we're not all perfect. But Klaus doesn't seem to agree because he says you should have. Your only family was nearly wiped out because of your stupidity. Which, thank God for Klaus's werewolf side making the dagger null and void, because otherwise, how else would they wake up? Just like, all the originals would then be daggered. Klaus then asks Rebecca, what did he promise you? She says nothing, and Klaus is like, he would not have made a move like this unless he knew you were vulnerable. You trusted him over me? And he's like super pissed about that because you know how Klaus is with Rebecca's boo thanks. He's like, it comes me, then your boyfriend at the end, okay? He's always gonna come first. And Klaus continues screaming, saying, what did he promise you? And Rebecca's sobbing, saying, nothing, Nick, I swear. And Klaus grabs her, screaming in her face, what did he promise you? Tell me, Rebecca! So nasty, so violent, you know how Klaus be. Back in present day, Klaus gestures to Stefan and says, go ahead, Rebecca, tell him what the vampire hunter told you the tattoo leads to. What's this great weapon that could bring about the end of the vampire species? Rebecca looks really emotional, having relived this story, and simply says to Stefan, a cure.
He said there was a cure.
Ooh! So yeah, the weapon for the story is the cure. I will be right by your side. If I can find a cure, I'll fix you with my love. Promise I'll be the cure. So after the screen goes black for dramatic effect, and an ad, Stefan gets up from the table and says, there is no cure for vampirism. And Rebecca gets up too and says, I'm telling the truth, Stefan. And Stefan goes to Klaus and says, then why wouldn't you have searched for it, found it? And Klaus, after pouring himself a drink, says, because when the hunters drew their final breath that night, their marks disappeared from their body. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier. Klaus not only killed Alexander, but he also killed the other 4 Brotherhoods of the 5. Klaus continues saying, with their death, the map was gone, the Brotherhood of the 5 extinct, and for 900 years there was not a whisper of another hunter until our friend there in the other room showed up to town. And next up we get one of my favorite Klaus and Rebecca scenes in the Vampire Diaries, because Rebecca's like, well, we have the map, what do we do next? And Klaus says, we don't do anything. You can't be trusted, little sister, you'll be blabbing the secret to the first boy who calls you pretty.
I mean, it's pathetic.
Really, isn't it? How she continues to hand her heart from man to man who shows her any hint of affection. Which he is reading her to absolute filth. So savage. Now, while Klaus does gag Rebecca severely, he is part of the reason she's like this. And I have a little mini explanation for this that I thought of, okay? So not only does Rebecca have daddy issues with Michael, she also has a lack of a female role model, considering her mother's always trying to kill her, and she doesn't even have a sister to relate to. She's also lived through centuries of various interactions of misogyny, but she has you, Klaus, a brother who controls her and never gets off her neck, allowing her to be happy because he wants all of her attention on him, meaning she can't even give it to any other man. That's why she is so desperate for love and affection, because she's not allowed to have it. And when you're desperate for love and affection, you don't exactly pick the best suitors. So I want you to look in the mirror, Klaus, because you are the reason your sister is like this. Okay, let's clock that tea. Sorry, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Rebecca, and while this read is funny, usually whenever Klaus is yelling at Rebecca, I find it to be abusive and repulsive. Klaus ends his rant saying, you think she would have learned by now from the endless cycles of disappointment and deception. And Rebecca goes on saying, but I haven't. Instead, I stay here with you and let you leech every moment of happiness from my life. She looks to Stefan and says, you know, at least I fared better than Finn. Klaus left him daggered because he was tired of his judgment. Which is so funny because, like, Klaus is not even the one who daggered Finn. He just, like, was like, ugh, you're boring. We'll just leave the dagger in there. Because he says, no, Finn was a dullard. He was more interested lying in a box. Which honestly, fair, we learned in season 3 that Finn is annoying and a sycophant. But anyway, Rebecca goes on to figure out Klaus's goal, which isn't exactly that hard, because she says to him, you want the cure for Elena, don't you? So you can go back to mass producing your hybrids. It's always about those goddamn hybrids, Klaus. What fat lot of good have they really done for you? What is the whole point of having the whole Cybon thing? Like, original vampires can compel vampires. Just turn a bunch of people and compel them. It's not, like, is it really worth all this effort? I mean, yes, they have werewolf venom in their fangs, but how often does that play up, you know? Anyway, Rebecca goes on saying, that's why you brought Stefan in, because you knew he would help you even though he hates your guts. Which you know Klaus is offended by, because in his mind, him and Stefan are really like mending their friendship and relationship. So he's a little offended by that. But Rebecca gets pissed off and tells him he can shove his cure and storms out of there. Klaus smiles and looks at Stefan, who says, well, I hope you got what you wanted out of her before you chased her off. And Klaus says she would have never given me what I needed to know, but she'll tell you. So really, he just brought Rebecca over to get the info out of her, which he already knew and could have told Stefan Was this just like some sort of humiliation ritual that Klaus had with Rebecca? Stefan sighs because he's like, damn, it's been a long day. I just want a glass of bourbon. And he says, what do you need me to find out? So damn, you really are Klaus's errand boy today, aren't you, Stefan? Klaus says the map is useless without the tools to decipher it, and Stefan realizes he means the hunter's sword. Klaus continues saying Rebecca knows where it is, and you're going to get her to tell you. So that's really why he needs Rebecca, right? But he knew he was never going to get it on his own, so once again, you just taunted her for no reason. But maybe he brought Rebecca there to add legitimacy to his story to Stefan, because he knows Stefan will do anything he wants now, considering there is a cure for vampirism, meaning Elena can go back to her old self. Very much giving, I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it, Taylor Swift all too well. So Klaus says to Stefan, you have a chance to save Elena from the very thing that's going to destroy her. You can call it a deal with the devil if you like, but you know you won't walk away from it. And he won't, because Stefan is seeing vampire Elena starting to lean more towards Damon, and he ain't liking that one bit. But on the more positive note, we know how much Stefan loves Elena, and she's confided in him about how she never wanted to be a vampire, and he can see how much she's struggling with this, so there's also probably a big part of him who just wants her to be human again and just erase this whole mess, But then Damon is the other part of that, so we can't ignore that. So back at Whitmore College, amuse bouche? Not since college. Bonnie enters Professor Shane's office, and he is grabbing some of her Grams' things for her, and she looks around the room at all of these witchy artifacts. Eagle-eyed viewers would notice that there is a drawing of a symbol on Shane's wall, the same symbol that we saw in the Hunter's tattoo. So is he connected to this? We'll find out. Bonnie's really enamored by his connection and asks if he grabs all this stuff on his travels, and Shane says, yeah, I do this thing. It's like a one-man traveling a cult exhibit to small towns. It funds my crazy Indiana Jones adventures. So it kind of seems to me that you steal native artifacts from witches, which isn't great. So anyway, Shane hands Bonnie a book that belonged to her Grams. It's the first edition of Stephen King's Cujo, the book about that crazy rabid dog. I've not read it. I've not seen it. I have no desire to. One thing about me, I don't really enjoy movies about scary animals. So anyway, Shane asks Bonnie if she's a practicing witch, like Sheila was, and Bonnie looks really skeptical, and he says, I'm a true believer. Just don't tell anyone. And Bonnie's like, no, I don't practice, not anymore. I lost control of myself and there were consequences. This obviously referring to when the witches on the other side punished her Grams for Bonnie trying to bring Elena back from the other side so she didn't have to become a vampire, right? And Shane says, witches love their consequences, don't they? And says, there are other ways to practice magic if you're interested. And Bonnie asks if he's a witch because he seems to know a little bit too much about what's going on in their culture. And he's like, no, I'm just a guy with a very open mind who's seen a lot of things, and I'm willing to test some of them out, if you are. And Bonnie kind of gives Shane a curious look and a smile, and this is the start of something very dark and sinister and predatory. You see, Bonnie is feeling really alone because she's lost her magic and gone through such a traumatic experience with her Grams, and none of her friends really get that. Her and Jamie just broke up, thank God. Her mother abandoned her for the third time. Her dad works all the time. We haven't even met him yet. And then here comes along this guy who says that he's got a way for her to practice magic again and reconnect with that without having to be a slave to the spirits. It's exactly what she wants to hear. So, you are a groomer. Shane, you are a groomer. Moving on, we then get one of the most iconic Delena scenes of all time. It lives rent-free in my mind. It forever changed the song. Calvin Harris, You Ate That One Thing, because then Feel So Close to You starts playing, and Elena and Damon are both feeding on different people. The blood is gushing everywhere. They come over to each other and they start dancing. It's like a rave, I feel so close to you right now. It's a force field. Like a big deal. Whoa, not me still knowing the lyrics. Around me like a waterfall. Oh, feel so close to you right now. Hey. Dubstep 20. They're probably also extremely high and drunk because all the humans they're feeding on are high and drunk, so it's just super sexy, super nasty. Elena is touching the blood on Damon's face and licking it with her fingers. They're all over each other. It's super inappropriate considering she's with Stefan, but it's also super hot. Anyway, this risque moment is cut short because Elena spots Bonnie, and Elena's face drops and she goes over to Bonnie and is like, I gotta get out of here. And Bonnie gives Damon a filthy look, and Damon is just like, and he continues dancing. Which, Elena, if you feel ashamed about what you're doing, you probably shouldn't do it in the first place. If you wouldn't do it in front of your boyfriend Stefan, you shouldn't do it, period. Anyway, back at Klaus's mansion, he enters the room where he's keeping Connor, and Jeremy is still doing his sketching, and Klaus is like, nice lines. Now, if you could just hurry it up a little bit. But Jeremy gets up and hands Klaus the drawing, and Klaus is like, what's this? And Jeremy's like, It's the tattoo. And Klaus quickly grabs him by the throat and says, I've seen the tattoo, you repugnant punk. Which is a really funny insult. And Jeremy says, that's all of it, I swear. He says every time he kills a vampire, it spreads. So Klaus drops Jeremy and then looks to Connor and calls out to his hybrid Nate and says, tell the girl to take Jeremy home and keep Connor alive at all costs. So Jeremy leaves the room with the hybrid and Klaus, and Connor tries to get rid of his chains and manages to loosen the bar. And then the hybrid Nate enters and says, looks like you've got too much leash. You're not going anywhere, so you might as well stop the racket. He goes to tighten the chains, but he gets too close to Connor, who bites his ear, and he has a chunk of it in his mouth. Just truly terrifying stuff. Nate punches him across the face and says, you lucky I can't kill you, freak. And he leaves, slamming the door behind him, but Connor fiddles around in his mouth like he's tying a cherry knot, and he opens up his bloody mouth and moves out a metal piece through his teeth, and it was an industrial piercing that Nate the hybrid had in his ear. So very smart, very resourceful. He starts picking the lock with it. Big brain behavior over here with Connor. He's not here to mess around. So back up at Whitmore College, Elena is freaking out with Bonnie, saying, who am I? Why am I acting like this? She's got blood all over her face. And Bonnie's like, because you listen to Damon, and Damon makes everything he wants sound like a good idea. Which true, Damon is very convincing, but to be fair, Elena did also agree to this, and now that it's all done and she's had her fun, she got clocked by Bonnie, and all of a sudden her attitude has changed. She goes on saying, I should be here with Stefan. I shouldn't be doing this with him. I should be going through all of this with Stefan. Damon then shows up and clears his throat, saying, guess we should hit the road. And Bonnie goes up to him and says, you were supposed to help her, but you let her get completely out of control. And Damon says she wasn't out of control, she was having fun, which is true. She didn't kill anyone, which ultimately was that not the goal, for her to learn self-control. But Bonnie isn't happy with this. You know, she's not really the biggest fan of vampires, and she says this isn't fun. She's acting like a different person. Which, yeah, to be fair, I don't think Bonnie has fully come to terms with the fact that Elena is a vampire. She's a different person kind of now. You know, it does change you. Look what happened to Caroline. It took Bonnie a while to like come to terms with that. And you know what? Unlike a lot of people who are giving Elena so much shit for those really difficult transitions she's going through and acting like it's the end of the world, Damon's just trying to get her mind off of it and help her have fun and help her look at the positives, because this is her situation, and as far as they all know, there's no way out of it. Like, she's gonna be a vampire, so like we might as well accept it and be positive. And like, we canonically know that as a vampire, your emotions are heightened, okay? So far be it for her to be a little bit different. Anyway, Damon goes on and says she is a different person. She's a vampire. We're a predatory species. We enjoy the hunt, the feed, and the kill. And when the guilt gets too bad, we switch of our humanity and we revel in it. And Bonnie's like, is that what you want, for her to be like you? And Damon's like, she already is like me. And you know what makes me able to drink my fill and leave someone breathing and not rip their head off like my brother? Is that I can revel in it. I can make it fun. Which, yeah, partially true, but let's not forget that when you're having a bad day, you lay down in the middle of the road and feed on a human's carotid until they die. So you might want to hop down a little bit of that moral high ground there, Damon. Anyway, he's pissed. He pushes past Bonnie, walks past Elena as tears roll down her face. And it's just messy. It's messy boots galore. And yeah, Elena, maybe you should have done this with Stefan. So back at the Salvatore house, Stefan is in the parlor room having a glass of bourbon because he's had a tough day. Rebecca comes in through the front door and says, I got your message. I'm sorry. I know you wanted my help. He just makes me so angry. And Stefan's like, you know, no one deserves to be treated that way. And he hands her a drink, which honestly is so transparent, but Rebecca doesn't see through it. She is falling for all of Stefan's manipulation today, even though Stefan has showed her repeatedly that he doesn't really care about her. She just opens up to Stefan so easily, and I fear this may be Klaus's point. But, you know, like I already discussed, he is part of the reason she is like this. But anyway, she goes on to Stefan and says, I wanted it back then, the cure, and I was willing to leave my family behind for it. Would you take it if you had the chance, or is it just for Elena? And Stefan says, part of me wishes that she and I could have an eternity together, but Damon's right. There's not a single vampire who hasn't killed a human. Elena will kill, and then there will be the pain and the guilt, and Rebecca says, the humanity switch. And Stefan continues saying, but Elena, she's driven by love, by compassion. If she turns off her humanity, I don't think we'll ever get her back. So I'd do anything to save her. Which is very sweet, Stefan, but I do believe that Damon is a part of this equation and Elena's feelings for him, but we'll pack that away. We'll sweep that under the rug like you're doing. Rebecca then says, I envy that. What you and Elena have. The love you have. Well, yeah, no shit. That's part of the reason you hate Elena's guts most of the time. Is you're what? Jealous of her. And jealousy's a disease, love, so get well soon. Anyways, Rebecca continues opening up to Stefan willingly, saying, I did believe Alex when he said he loved me. He promised me we'd be married. We even picked out a church. San Vittore in Briano. I know you want my help, Stefan, but I just can't do anything that lets my brother get what he wants. She finishes her drink and goes to leave, but Stefan knows that he is so close to getting what he needs out of her. If he can just be vulnerable himself, then she will continue being vulnerable. She's basically already an open book at this point. So Stefan stops her and says, I never did answer your question. If it meant that I got to be with Elena, have children, grow old with her, if it meant that we could die together, be buried together, then yes, I'd take the cure. Which is very sweet, and Rebecca is touched by this story because ultimately she doesn't really like being a vampire. She wants to be loved. She wants a simple human life. We'll learn a lot about her desire for that this season. But she continues to share her love story with the vampire hunter Alexander, even though we have no proof that he actually did love her. But she says, I buried him, even after everything. I laid him to rest in the place where we would be married. What kind of hopeless fool does that? Which, yeah, that is pretty pathetic considering he tried to kill you, so. Anyway, in that moment, you can see Stefan's eyes shift, realizing he just got what he wanted, and Rebecca realizes this too, because she's like, oh, damn. But that's what you wanted to know, isn't it? Because I buried him with his sword. And you can tell Stefan feels a little bad for manipulating her, but I mean, he knew what he was doing, and she did make it kind of easy, so. Then Klaus walks in and says, I'm sorry, little sister, but you're right. You really are a hopeless fool. Damn, way to dig the knife deeper. And speaking of, he pulls the dagger and ash out from behind his back, and Rebecca tries to vamp speed away, but Stefan vamp speeds in front of her, blocking her exit. And Stefan looks kind of emotional. He's like teary-eyed, even though he clearly orchestrated this trap with Klaus, you know, because they need to get Rebecca out of the way. She's too much of a liability, while she really is liability by Lord for melodrama. Because even in season 3, episode 9, Elena daggered Rebecca because she was too much of a liability for their plan. So anyway, he apologizes. Rebecca turns to Klaus crying and says, go right ahead. Laugh at the girl who loved too easily. Well, I'd rather have lived my life than yours, Nick.
No one will ever sit around a table telling stories about a man who couldn't love.
This clearly affects Klaus because she's now clucking his tea because nobody likes you. Nobody likes you, okay? And he's crying, looking down, and Rebecca's yelling at him, do it. Look me in the eye and do it, you coward. Do it. And so Klaus does drive the dagger into Rebecca, but he does not look her in the eyes because he's being pathetic and a coward, like she clocked. So she desiccates, and it really is a powerful emotional moment. They're giving us a lot of beautiful scenes between Klaus and Rebecca that really shows the intense dynamics between them. Almost like they want you to get even more invested in these characters because they got a spin-off around the corner. So we jump ahead in time, and Stefan is covering Rebecca's body with a sheet, and Klaus tells him, I have a plane waiting for Italy. I'll get the sword. My hybrids will keep an eye on Connor. You put Rebecca somewhere where no one can find her, and make sure Jeremy forgets everything that happened today. Damn, Stefan, you really are Klaus's bitch boy with all those errands. You might as well be one of his sired hybrids. Anyway, Klaus hands Stefan Jeremy's Gilbert ring back, and Stefan says, I'll take care of it. Klaus continues saying, no one must know about the cure. Do you understand, Stefan? Not Damon, not Elena, nobody. If this gets out, it could mean all of our deaths. So if you tell anyone, I'll erase each and every memory from all of you. Stefan says he won't say anything, and Klaus says, it's just you and me in this, Stefan. Some secrets are stronger than family. Ooh, we got a Klaus and Stefan alliance up in here. And I really love it because you guys know, I mean, if you watch my season 3 videos, I love the iconic dynamic duo of Klaus and Stefan. Clefin. Slaus. Stefosi and Klaususi. So over at the Gilbert house, Damon walks Elena to the front door and says, well then, good night. He goes to leave and Elena stops him and says, Damon, I'm sorry, okay? Things got a little heated at the party and I shouldn't have let that happen. It's just that I felt like... And Damon interrupts her and is like, what do you feel, Elena? He seems so over it all, and Elena is being really earnest and tells him, when you tell me what it means to be a vampire, deep down I believe you. And I think that you're right. And I hate that feeling because I don't want to be... Damon interrupts her again and says, you don't want to be like me. Elena sighs and doesn't say anything, just shaking her head. But before she can say anything else, Stefan opens the front door and Elena asks what he's doing there. He says he was just hanging out with Jeremy. They had a couple things they had to talk about, which, like, this should be a red flag. Why would Stefan ever hang out with Jeremy, Elena? Like, let's clock that T. Everyone's always compelling Jeremy to forget stuff. But anyways, Damon asks Stefan if there's any news on the hunter, and Stefan lies, saying no. And Damon's like, okay, well, today's been a bust then. She's all yours. And Elena looks like kind of offended by this, because yeah, I mean, what is she? Like, you're like babysitting her, handing over, like, what the hell? And you do gotta wonder if the she's all yours is a double meaning. But anyway, after Damon's left, Stefan asks Elena what happened, and she tries to put on a brave face and says, I learned how to feed without hurting anyone. But then the act drops and she says, it was awful. You were right. I got caught up in it. And Stefan says, it'll get easier. And Elena says, I don't want it to get easier. I can't live like this, Stefan. I'm feeling things that I don't want to feel. And I'm becoming someone I don't want to be. I really don't think I'm going to survive this. And she starts crying, and Stefan, you know, hugs her, puts her in her arms, and he says, yes, you will. Yes, you will. And you really gotta wonder if what Elena's saying also has a double meaning. Like, I don't like these things that I'm feeling. I don't want to feel these things. Like,
Feeling things that I don't want to feel.
is she just talking about being a vampire? Or is she also talking about her feelings towards Damon? Well, yes, you are. Yes, you are. But Stefan tells Elena, you just have to hold on. Just hold on, okay? Because in his mind, he knows that he's gonna get a cure for her so she doesn't have to be a vampire anymore. But he can't tell her that. Messy boots shouldn't be keeping secrets in a relationship, so. Back at Klaus's mansion, the hybrid Nate enters Connor's room with some like water and food. And he's on the phone to Klaus, who's about to leave for Italy, and says, don't worry, I'll keep him fat and happy. But you should send 2 more guys for protection. But it's a little bit too late for that, because when he hangs up the phone, Connor breaks free from his chains, which he had, picked earlier with the stud earring that he got from Nate, and he strangles Nate with the chains. He like throws them over his neck, and he pulls until he decapitates Nate. Pretty graphic. And we then see the tattoo on his arm start to grow, and the symbol on his arm transitions into the symbol that is on the wall of Professor Shane's office. So Connor enters Shane's office and he says to him, shouldn't you be in Mystic Falls killing vampires? And Connor's like, why the hell did you send me there? And Shane smiles. So that is the end of the episode. Clearly, this Professor Shane guy is involved with Connor and the Hunters and Mystic Falls, and it is all just unraveling from here. Such a great episode. Not only did we have this really fun storyline of Damon and Elena, going to this party and like such an iconic Elena scene, we also got introduced to this very important character and we see how he's connected to things. We learn about the stakes of this cure. This changes everything. And we learn from Klaus and Rebecca through the backstory and all these fun flashbacks that everything is connected. So first of all, we have the map, which is the tattoos that is on Connor. The more vampires he kills, the more the map spreads. We have Jeremy, who's the only one who can see the map. He is a potential hunter. And we then have the sword, which is the key to translating the map. That sword we learned from Rebecca's sub story is buried in Italy with the hunter Alexander, so Klaus is going to get that. And then all of this is supposed to lead us to a cure for vampirism. Now, there's a lot of steps in between there, but this really is a turning point where things are getting exciting. I remember watching season 4, the first 3 episodes, I was like, okay, cool, what's happening? Where are we going? What's happening? This episode is like, boom, we're here. Things are happening. So without further ado, great episode. Let's get into the next one. Season 4, episode 5 of the Vampire Diaries, titled The Killer. So this episode begins in Connor's trailer where he enters after escaping being kidnapped by Klaus and decapitating the hybrid Nate's head. He puts the severed head on the table and starts extracting werewolf venom from his fangs, and he also grabs a bunch of weapons that he has hidden throughout his RV. And then we flash back to the night before where we ended off last episode, where Connor is talking to Professor Shane in his office at Whitmore College. He says, do you have any idea what I went through? I spent the last 2 days chained up by an original vampire. Shane doesn't really gaff though, because all he says is, oh, so you met Klaus? I only know him by reputation. Apparently he's a real monster. Connor says that he's a vampire werewolf hybrid. Do you have any idea how hard they are to kill? He's clearly pissed after trying to kill Tyler so many times and failing. Shane says, from what I gather, you have to remove their head or their heart. That is according to law though, I'm speculating. Connor's pissed, saying, I had to figure out how to do all this on my own. I could have used some of your occult professor knowledge of yours, but then again, you've always been very slow when it comes to providing the answers. So it's interesting to know how these characters are connected. Connor has been working with Shane this whole time, and Shane tells him, we had a deal. I'll give you the answers about your hunter's mark when it's grown to completion. And Connor says, in other words, kill as many vampires as possible. And Shane says, come on, Connor, why do you think I sent you to Mystic Falls? There's no shortage of vampires. That place is practically infested. I mean, he's not wrong there. He then goes on to Connor and says, listen, there's a witch mixed up in all of this, obviously referring to Bonnie, and saying she's important to what I have planned. What does he have planned? And he says, I want her kept out of harm's way. But Connor is clearly juiced up on wanting to kill people, and he has all this adrenaline, and he says,
Anybody gets in my way, they're dead.
and Shane's like, okay, I guess I'll have to occupy her myself. Just go do what you do.
The less I know about it, the better.
It kind of seems like Shane is disgusted with the way that Connor conducts himself, but he also needs him to be killing vampires and finishing his mark. So it's a very shady vibe between these two, but we finally know some of Connor's motivation for coming to Mystic Falls and doing what he does, because he clearly wants to know more about himself and his hunter's mark, especially based on the previous episode when he was talking to Jeremy about it, that this is something that he's really questioning with his identity. Like, he thinks if he finds out why he's a hunter, why he has this mark, that it's somehow going to help him understand himself, when I don't really think it's that deep. And also, he could have got that information from Klaus, but obviously why would he trust Klaus after Klaus kidnapped him and was acting all shady? So this shady professor is kind of the best that he's got. Anyways, back in present day, Connor is walking through the Mystic Falls town square with a duffel bag filled with weapons, and he is heading for the Mystic Grill. Inside the grill, we see Jeremy in the storage room unpacking things, getting ready for his shift when he hears a noise, and he looks around, but when he turns around, Connor is there and puts a knife to his throat and says, "Do I have your attention?" Jeremy nods and he says, "Good. Now let's talk about vampires." Once again, Jeremy just minding his business and landing up in danger. Over at the Gilbert house, Elena wakes up in her bedroom looking depressed, and we hear her narration because she is writing in her diary, which is now not only just a diary, but a vampire diary. I do always love whenever they bring the diaries back into things because, I don't know, it's just a fun little element of the show, and I honestly wish they implemented it more considering it's in the title, but I digress. She says, "Dear diary, I know it's been a while," which is literally me anytime I ever wrote in a diary growing up. I was so obsessed with, well, give me a second. These are just some of the journals that I started towards my later teen years because I was so obsessed with wanting to have a journal or a diary as a teenager because of the show. And as you can see, it didn't really stick. Like, these all probably have like 10 to 15 pages filled. And it would always be, "I'm sorry, I've been away, dear diary. Like, it's just been so crazy. Life isn't crazy." Anyway, she continues saying to her diary, "It's been a long while. I haven't wanted to write this stuff down, but I don't want to say it out loud either. The thing is, I'm a vampire, and I hate it." We then go over to the Salvatore house where Stefan is writing in his diary, and these two scenes cut together, and these two are basically saying the opposite of what each other are saying. Stefan writes in his diary about Elena, "She's been spiraling since her transition. There are times I barely recognize her." Ouch. But for now, for the first time in a while, there's hope. Back to Elena, she writes, "I feel hopeless, depressed, angry, but most of all, I'm scared." Back to Stefan, he writes, "Somewhere in the world there's a cure for vampires. If I can get it, Elena will be human again. I can give her her life back." But back to Elena, she writes, "Part of me just wants to end my life." It's getting really dark. And she says, "But then I think of Jeremy, and I'm all that he has left, so I need to find a way to get through this, no matter what it takes." So we're really setting up a lot of the stakes that Jeremy is really all she has left. Really all she has left. She has lost 2 biological parents, 2 adoptive parents, and 2 surrogate parents, so it ain't looking good. Back to Stefan, he finishes in his journal saying, "So that's what I need to do. No matter what Klaus asks of me, no matter what lies I have to tell, secrets I have to keep, I'll do it, no matter what it takes." Which is tough, because it's never usually a good thing to lie in a relationship. But of course, Stefan is in a tough spot considering Klaus swore him to secrecy. And speaking of Klaus, Stefan gets a text from Klaus saying, "We have a problem." We then go over to Klaus's mansion where Stefan is standing over the lifeless, headless corpse of Nate the Hybrid on the phone with Klaus, and he says, "How the hell did Connor escape?" We then go over to Italy where Klaus is at an excavation site trying to dig up the sword that we found out in the last episode Rebecca had buried with her ex-hunter lover, Alexander, one of the Brotherhood of the Five. We remember that. So back to it, Klaus says on the phone, "I blame the mind-numbing incompetence of my hybrids, but pointing fingers isn't gonna help me. You're gonna help me." And Stefan says, "Well, he could be anywhere now," and Klaus is like, "Think, Stefan. He took the hybrid's head, which means he wants werewolf toxin to kill more vampires. Now I am on the other side of the world, so you won't have access to my blood, therefore the antidote." Klaus continues saying, "Nevertheless, his tattoo is our only map to the cure, so your task is quite simple, Stefan. Find him, catch him, and above all, keep him alive." So we're setting up a lot of the stakes for this episode. We have no cure for a werewolf bite, if any of our gang gets that in their system, considering Klaus is all the way in Italy. Not to mention, Stefan has to keep the hunter alive, even though he's hellbent on killing all of them, and he can't tell anyone why. So it's a tough episode for Stefan, it really is. I feel for him. Stefan tells Klaus that Damon has been looking for Connor everywhere, and Klaus tells him to keep Damon in check, and Stefan's like, "It'd be a lot easier if I could just tell him the truth." And Klaus is like, "You trust Damon with the cure? I imagine he likes Elena just the way she is." Which, you know what, you gotta give it to Klaus. As far as he knows, there's a love triangle going on here, so might as well try and put the brothers against each other. But Stefan doesn't fall for it and says, "Nice try, Klaus, but I trust Damon a hell of a lot more than I trust you." And Klaus is like, "Well, I trust no one. That's why my sister's lying daggered in a box." And Klaus gets serious here with Stefan because he really needs to have Stefan on his side, like on track for their plan, because he's all the way in Italy. Like, he can't really do anything in the hometown of Mystic Falls to keep Connor alive. So it's truly up to Stefan not only to do that, but to keep everything a secret. So he gets serious and tells Stefan, "The more who find out about the cure, the more who will go after it. Nations have gone to war over less. You mark my words, tell one soul, and I will throw the hunter's sword in the Mediterranean, and we can end this quest right now. Am I understood?" Stefan just hangs up the phone, so Klaus assumes he's understood. And like I said, it's a tough episode for Stefan, for him to be put in this position to keep a secret from his girlfriend and his brother father and his friends is really difficult, but it's also in his best interest because this way he can like be in control of it. And Stefan is a lot more level-headed than everyone else. Of course, Damon is impulsive and reckless, and Elena is a complete emotional wreck right now. So even though, yes, he does have to keep it a secret, it is kind of good for him to like keep it all under wraps. Because also, yeah, he's saying he trusts Damon, but why would Damon want Elena to be cured? He probably wouldn't care. And also, why would you want to tell Elena about the cure? Because then if you're not able to find it, then you're setting her hopes up, and she can't handle that right now when she is in such a dark place. And for Klaus, obviously, he has a lot riding on this. We know that he wants Elena to be cured so that he can use her blood to mass produce more hybrids, but also because think about it, this is a cure for vampirism, yes, for those who want it, but there's also a lot of vampires who would not want that. And if somebody shoves the cure down Klaus's throat, then he'll become mortal and he can be killed. It stands to reason that his sire line to all the other vampires could be severed and our gang could finally get rid of them. So I think that's the main reason Klaus wants to keep this a secret, is because he knows that Stefan's not going to use the cure on him because he would rather give it to Elena. Whereas if other people find out about it, they might want to use it against him. So very serious stuff going on here in the Stefan and Klaus camp. Over at the girl, Matt's setting up tables, leaving a voicemail to Jeremy asking where the hell he is because he's half an hour late. April then shows up and Matt tells her that they're not open, and she says she knows, and Matt gives her a look and she's like, oh, I wasn't like trying to stalk you or whatever. I came to see, have you seen Rebecca? And Matt's like, why would I have seen her? And April's like, aren't you two kind of a thing? And he's like, no, we are most definitely not a thing. Which is so funny given what happened last episode where Rebecca's like, I've got Debs. Like, you know, she probably went further with that with April and was like, yeah, me and Matt kind of have a will they won't they situation going on here. Like, he wants me, but he's playing hard to get. April's storyline is really funny these next couple episodes because she just spends every episode being like, has anyone seen Rebecca? Does anyone know where Rebecca is? And like, nobody cares. Like, no one. And it's really funny for her because for everybody, they're used to Rebecca kind of disappearing because they know that she gets daggered and put in the box and it's like, whatever. But for April, who isn't in on this supernatural world, she's like, my new friend just disappeared. Like, why does nobody seem to care? Like, let's call the authorities. Like, it's really funny thinking about April's perspective on everything. And of course, not only is April friends with Rebecca, but Rebecca did also promise her that she would help her find more information about the council fire with her dad. So that's also part of her motivation. But then Connor enters the room holding Jeremy with a knife to his throat and says, trust me, that's the least of your problems. And April gasps. Over at the Gilbert house, Elena opens her bedroom door about to leave, but Damon is there and just walks straight in, asking where Stefan is. And Elena's like, okay, good morning to you too, acting shocked, like he did something so rude. Let's not forget that this guy watches you when you sleep, shows up in your bed when you wake up, and goes through your underwear drawer, but I digress. And Damon's like, Stefan's not answering his phone and he's not here, which no big deal. We've only got a killer vampire hunter on the loose. And Elena says she hasn't spoken to Stefan today yet, but Damon asks for her phone and says Stefan might be dodging his calls. Elena asks why he'd be doing that, and Damon's like, oh, I don't know, maybe because of the hot, sweaty dance party business. I figured you spilled your guilty little guts to him when I left last night. Elena looks really ashamed by this and stays mute, and Damon's like, oh, you didn't tell him, did you? And Elena's like, no, Damon, I didn't tell him that I
got high on blood like some crackhead and then dirty dance with you.
It was a mistake, okay? Whatever you have to say to convince yourself of that. Okay. Because she didn't really seem to have an issue with it until other people, like Bonnie, found out about it. And her keeping that from Stefan, I don't know, I feel like it's a bit dishonest because she should tell him. It's not like Lost how much she did stuff with Damon where Stefan explicitly told her not to because they weren't together and he wanted her to figure out her feelings. She's figured it out. She chose Stefan. Let us remind you. Elena goes on saying, it wasn't myself, okay? And besides, he's already got enough stuff to deal with by trying to help me with all this vampire stuff. She gives Damon her phone and he says, I see, this is just a classic shame spiral. They argue back and forth whether or not she's in one while Damon is calling Stefan, and it goes to voicemail. So Damon and Elena deduce that either he's dodging both of them or something's wrong. Or, I don't know, guys, what about option 3? His phone died, or he's just busy doing something else and he's not with his phone. But they're already having a really weird, suspicious vibe off of Stefan, like off the bat, just because he's not answering your calls. Like, is it that serious? I don't know. Back at the grill, Connor is yelling at his hostages to sit down and tells Jeremy to give him his phone. And so he does, and Jeremy tells him to let April go because she has nothing to do with this. And Connor's like, she has everything to do with this. Her and her father. We have history. Interesting, huh? He's involved with Pastor Young. So he didn't just look at that, you know, burnt up council house fire situation for nothing. Like, he's involved. And April's really confused by this, saying,
I've never seen you before in my life.
Obviously, we and Connor know that he already kidnapped April and stabbed her and used her as bait in the church shooting, but of course she doesn't remember that because she was compelled. And Connor's like, damn, you kids really need some vervain, and they do. But also good for you that she did forget, otherwise you might be in prison, because that was illegal, and she is human. Anyway, with regards to Connor's comments about vervain, he points out to Jeremy saying, and don't just wear it on a bracelet where anybody can take it off. Maybe then you would remember our conversation with the hybrids yesterday. And Jeremy's confused by this and being like, wait, someone compelled me? Yes, Jeremy, congratulations, 1 + 1 is 2. That's quite literally what he said. And April's getting frustrated, like, can somebody please please tell me what the hell is going on? And Connor is so pissed off with her off the bat, and he's like, vampires, compulsion, secrets. Like, he's just yelling out buzzwords. And Matt's like, if you know so much, then you know that our friends are gonna come after us. He thought he ate with that one. And Connor's like, yeah, I'm kind of counting on that. Well, yeah, Matt, that's kind of how being a hostage works. What is with the stupidity with the three of them? Jeremy, Matt, and April? Like, no wonder they're hostages. Anyway, Connor continues saying, every vampire that comes for you is another one that I get to kill. Now, who should I text, huh? Damon Salvatore, Stefan Salvatore, or Tyler Lockwood? I don't know. How about all of the above? And so he sends a text from Jeremy's phone to all of them that reads, hunters at Mystic Grill with hostages. They all die at sundown. He sends the message and then smashes Jeremy's phone. So he really means business. And this is a really great episode. I really think that season 4, episode 2, the memorial with, you know, Connor and his plan and everything, and it was all interesting. But it only took up like a certain portion of the episode, whereas like this whole episode pretty much is centered around Connor having these hostages in the grill. And I think it's really well done. There's a lot of great action in this episode. So it's going to be a lot of fun to discuss. So over at the Lockwood Mansion, Damon, Elena, and Tyler are trying to figure out a plan when Stefan arrives. Elena hugs him and Damon asks him where he's been. And Stefan's like, I've been coming up with the plan. And Damon's like, we already have a plan. And that's to rip out Connor's heart and feed it to him. And Stefan's like, look, we need to be careful because of Jeremy and whatever other hostages he has. But Elena's like, Stefan, Damon's right. Connor may be strong, but he can't take all of us. Well, yeah, girl, he can't, but that means some of you would die. Like, think. And are you really willing to take that risk with Jeremy's life? Like, Damon and Elena off the bat are being stupid and impulsive. Like, Stefan is trying to be cautious here. But no. Let's not forget, Damon, that Connor already bested you when you weren't even there. When you tried to break into his RV and he put those arrows with the bombs there. Like, we know he likes bombs. We know he likes werewolf venom. Like, let's use our brain. Tyler says he called in some hybrids to help, and then Caroline enters saying that her mom, the sheriff, has put quad cars to block out the streets so that no one could get in the town square, and they're saying it's a faulty gas main, so they're good to go. Really weird that like Liz isn't in this episode. It's kind of funny how like the sheriff just took a back seat, as well as the mayor. They're just like, you guys handle it. It's supernatural business. Just get one of the Salvatores to donate to recover and repair whatever happens to the grill, like they did with the hospital. At this point, Stefan's freaking out because he arrived late because he's been like chatting on the phone with Klaus trying to figure out stuff with Connor, and he could see that everybody's come up with the plan, and he's freaking out trying to think of a way quickly to keep Connor alive. Otherwise, he's not going to get that cure for Elena, but he can't tell them why he wants Connor alive. But Damon just goes on and says, great, no cops, no witnesses, no reason to wait around. And he goes to leave, but Stefan's like, look, we can't all go. And Tyler's like, that guy shot me like 9 times. If we're killing him, I want in. And Elena's like, he's got Jeremy, I'm going. Stefan's really losing it, so he says, nobody's going anywhere until I figure out what we're walking into. And like, you know, I do have to be on everyone's side here and be like, who put you in charge, Stefan? And Damon says, until you figure it out.
Is that where you been all morning? Out buying bossy pants?
David's so dumb sometimes. And Stefan's like, look, this guy's known for setting traps. It would be pretty dumb to walk into one, especially if he has werewolf venom. And Elena's like, does he? And Stefan's like, well, he's had it before, which is a good save, because obviously Stefan knows for a fact that he does have werewolf venom, but no one else does, but he has. So far Stefan is handling things, but it's quickly getting away from him. But ultimately they all buy Stefan's stance on the plan because it is true to his character that he wants to think rationally and think of all the possible risks, whereas Damon, you know, is just super impulsive, but he even gives in and says, fine, you want to take some time to do some recon, you got about an hour. But we're going to need some extra help, so where the hell is the Wicked Witch of the West? Rude. Caroline jumps in and says that Bonnie can't do magic right now, and Damon's like, well, why don't you tell her that Jeremy's life is in danger? Maybe that'll take her out of retirement. Actually, no. You know how I'm always talking about give Bonnie a day off? Today is the one episode, I think, in the whole series where Bonnie actually gets a goddamn day off. She stays out of this mess, which I'm happy for her. And also, sometimes we need that. It's too easy to solve everything with magic. Interestingly enough, Bonnie has, like, not really had any involvement with the hunter, which is really interesting. But anyway, so speaking of Bonnie, we go over to Whitmore College where she is in Professor Atticus Shane's office, remembering he's trying to keep her occupied so she can stay out of Connor's mess. She's reading a book that is actually Shane's that he wrote, and it is titled The Book of Occult. So real creative title you got there. And Bonnie is smiling, clearly impressed by Shane, saying, oh my god, I can't believe you wrote a book. And he's like, I actually wrote 3, but the other 2 are too mortifying to display. And Bonnie pulls out her phone and says, I'm totally finding them online. But Shane hands out his hand to tell Bonnie, like, give me your phone. And he's like, hey, you promised, right? Remember, no cell phones, no internet during witch therapy. So Bonnie hands him her phone, making her unreachable, which is very smart on his accounts. But then it gets real creepy because he hands her some tea to help her focus. And he says, I want your undivided attention. And Bonnie's like, you really think you can help me start practicing magic again? And he says, absolutely I can. I invited you here because I know I can. But you know what? Right now, just relax, drink your tea. Girl, do not drink that. Do not drink a beverage that this random creepy man gave you. You don't know what's in that? Well, actually you do, because he basically in layman's terms tells you that it's drugs. He says, I got this when I was in Australia, which Australia mentioned, what's up fellow Aussies? He says, I got this tea when I was backpacking with the Aborigine spirit guides. Trust me, it's way better when you smoke it. But I'm trying to be a role model. Are you now? Bonnie just smiles, doesn't ask any follow-up questions, and just blindly drinks the tea. Girl, there is a line of stupidity and you are crossing it. Shane goes on saying, Bonnie, the thing is, what I have in mind might come off as a little unorthodox. She says, ooh, now I'm officially curious. She's got a bit of a flirty vibe. And Shane goes to grab a wooden triangular tool with a metal stick that ticks from side to side called a metronome, and he asks her what she knows about hypnosis. And she skeptically says, you really think that would work? And Shane's like, what, you practice witchcraft but you don't believe in hypnotism? Bonnie, listen, you're afraid to practice magic because the witch spirits convince you that it's wrong. And at this point, he's taken his hand up to his ear and is playing with it, and Bonnie's staring at his hand as he's talking. He continues saying, they threatened your grams and they made you feel guilty. Bonnie then takes her hand up to her ear and starts playing with it, mirroring what Shane's doing, and she kind of seems like she's in a trance. And Shane continues saying, you just have to confront that fear and that guilt and remove it. He then drops his hand and Bonnie drops hers and snaps out of this like little trance, and she says, maybe, but I just don't think hypnosis would work. Witches are naturally immune to any sort of manipulation. Girl, I don't know about that, because he got you to come to his office, give him your phone, and drink some tea that is essentially drugs. So seems like you're being manipulated pretty easily. And Shane says, really? Well, let me ask you something. How'd you like to put that earring back on? And Bonnie looks down to see her earring on the desk and smiles. So he hypnotized her to take her earring off without even realizing. It's getting weird. It's giving mind control. And also Bonnie should be really suspicious. Like, I know she's upset with the spirits, but why is he trying to get you to ignore the spirits? Let's not forget, witches never bode well when they're dabbling with dark magic. We saw that with Esther, who abandoned the spirits and ended up creating the vampire species as a whole, because she turned on the spirits and then they turned on hers. But anyways, that's it for this scene. But we really need to keep a close eye on Bonnie and this Professor Shane. So over at the Mystic Falls town square, it's all empty and Stefan is walking through it on the phone to Klaus, who says, you expect me to care about bloody hostages? And Stefan says, well, you should, because Damon does, and so does Caroline, so does Tyler, and so does Elena. And if any of them get to Connor first, you just wasted a trip to Italy. Look, I can buy us some time, but Damon's getting antsy, so if you want Connor alive, you better get your hybrids on board with my plan. Stefan hangs up the phone and we see Elena watching him from a window in Lark's apartment, so that came in handy. And she asks Damon who Stefan's talking to, and he says, well, Bonnie, hopefully. Maybe she's decided to make herself useful again. Once again, rude. He then lays out a map on the table that he found in one of Lark's drawers, and Elena asks what it is, and Damon says it's their way in, courtesy of Lark Saltzman, and his interest in the Mystic Falls Underground Railroad. Elena's like, so they're tunnels like the ones in the Lockwood cellar. She then gets a phone call from Stefan and asks what he found out, and he said he could only make out the voices, so including Jeremy, Connor also has Matt and April as hostages. And Elena's really shocked by this, and Damon's like, ugh, those two idiots, they're danger magnets. Which, is he wrong? And Elena's like, you have to get them out of there now, but Stefan says he just needs a little more time, and Damon's like, clock's ticking, brother, and Stefan's like, look, I could do without the colored commentary. And honestly, I'm on Damon's side with this. It's fair for him to question this, because what is taking him so goddamn long? Elena says she's going in those tunnels, but Damon says she's not, because Connor doesn't know that she's a vampire, and it's best to keep it that way. But Elena says maybe they could use his lack of knowledge to their advantage. She can offer to trade herself in exchange for one of the hostages. And Damon's against this plan, saying best case scenario, now you're a hostage. Worst case scenario, he kills you on the spot. And Elena tells him, stop treating me like I can't handle myself, okay? Lark trained me, and I've been practicing with Stefan. And Damon's like, so what? Now you're gonna go on and take a professional killer? And he vamp speeds over to the bed and grabs a stake gun that was laying on it and points at Elena and says, bang, now you're dead. Elena vamp speeds over to Damon, grabs the gun from him, pins him down, straddling him. Girl, you didn't need to do all that. Pointing the gun at his heart and says, headshot's no good, it has to be the heart. Now you're dead. Damon chuckles and guides the weapon away from his face and says, for someone who doesn't want to be like me, you sure are good at it. So he's clearly enjoying Elena being a vampire. And Elena says to him, Damon, my brother is the only thing that's holding me together right now. Anything happens to him, but Damon promises her that they're gonna get him out. Elena, getting a little too comfortable with Damon over there. So back inside the girl, Connor is making a bomb while Jeremy, Matt, and April are watching him sitting at a table and whispering, and April's crying because unlike Matt and Jeremy, this is her first time being kidnapped, or at least the first time that she remembers. By now, Matt and Jeremy, they're kind of used to this. They're like, at least we don't have to work today. So April's freaking out and is whispering, clearly he's delusional, right? Like, all this talk about vampires? I mean, he mentioned my dad, so like, what does that mean? And Matt's like, look, April, this guy's a nut job, okay? Don't let him get in your head. And April asks Jeremy if Connor said anything to him about why he's doing all of this, and Jeremy's like, I don't know, or maybe I just can't remember. And he walks away. So he's pissed that he's been compelled, and Matt's like, Jer, just let it go. I bet Matt's thinking like, this isn't the first time he's been compelled. So Jeremy goes over to Connor to ask him about the conversation they had yesterday, but he says they'll get into that, but tells him to look at his handiwork and pick up some tips from the hunter's trade. So he starts explaining his homemade bomb contraption to Jeremy saying, "The fluid is derived from werewolf toxin. Trip the wire. Bomb goes off. Nails deliver a lethal dose into the bloodstream." And Jeremy's like, okay, like what's the point of all of this? Like what do you get out of all of it? And Connor's like, I used to think that there was no get, that I was just supposed to kill vampires. That's until I realized the mark held the answer to why I am the way I am. The more I kill, the more it grows. And once it's complete, I'll learn my story, and all of this would have meant something. And he sounds a little shaky, like he's trying to convince himself that that's really the tea, when in fact, I think you just like blowing stuff up. I think you just like killing people. You were in the army after all, by choice, so... Anyway, Connor then snaps out of this and yells to Matt and April to get into the back now because they're gonna have visitors soon. And he tells them that before they think of escaping, he has all of the exits rigged. This guy loves a bomb. Back inside Locke's apartment, Elena's nervously looking out the window at the empty town square and grill, and Damon tells her that Stefan will be back soon and all of this will be over. But she's like, will it? Isn't this the reason that we sent Jeremy to Denver in the first place? And Damon's like, well, this time we'll send him to the Bahamas. He can find a nice island girl. And she's smiling. Yeah, it's so funny stripping your brother of his free will. And let's not forget what happened last time you sent him somewhere, an original fandom, so he's not going to be safe anywhere. Stefan then enters the apartment asking Damon if he found the tunnel map, and Damon shows it to him and says it was in the weapons drawer with 7 stakes and a weird MacGyver crossbow and the last remaining vervain in Mystic Falls. So how about we get this party started? And Stefan tells him not yet. Klaus is sending over one of his men. He'll take the front and you and I will get into the tunnels. And Damon rightly so asks, since when do we team up with Klaus? Because it is suspicious considering they've always had opposing goals. The only time they really did team up with Klaus was when they were like going after a Lark, and the only reason a Lark was going after him was because of his mother, and they brought in Esther, so it was all messy-cabessy. Messy-cabessy, is that a thing? But either way, they don't typically side with Klaus. Stefan tells Damon, I already told you, okay, Connor has werewolf venom. We need someone to draw his fire, and the hybrids are immune to it, so they're our best bet. And this is a mistake because Stefan's sounding a little too confident and knowledgeable, like he knows for a fact that Connor does have werewolf venom, when it was just speculation before. And Damon questions how he knows this and why Klaus is involved, and Stefan turns around and sneakily picks up a vervain dart and tells Damon to stop being so paranoid, and Damon's like, tell the truth, Stefan. And Stefan says, this is the truth. This is the best way to get everyone out. And Elena's like, what's wrong with you two? We're wasting time. And Damon's like, you know what? She's right. Screw your plan. I'll kill Connor myself. And he goes to leave, but then Stefan injects him with a vervain dart. And look, this isn't really helping Stefan's shady allegations. So Stefan lays Damon's unconscious body, and Elena asks him why he's doing this, and he says Damon had the right idea with the tunnels, but I'm not going in there if I can't count on him to do it my way. And Elena's confused, saying, if you can't count on him, you just vervained him. Well, Elena, let's not forget when you got Stefan to snap Damon's neck repeatedly so you could get him out of the way so you could talk to Esther. Let's jump off of that mighty high horse, why don't we? So Stefan goes in with another angle saying, do you really think that Damon cares about April or Matt? He'll get Jeremy out for you and then he'll just leave the rest, which is a good point because let's not forget how he felt about Stefan saving Matt's life. Like, he doesn't exactly care to keep him alive, unlike Elena. Anyways, Elena tells Stefan that she's coming with him and he's like, you're not coming with me, Elena. What if Connor attacks you and then you have to defend yourself and you kill him? The guilt will wreck you. Elena's freaking out saying, you don't think I'm afraid of that? Of course I am, Stefan. I'm barely holding it together. If Jeremy gets hurt, and Stefan promises her Jeremy is going to be safe, he's going to get him out, and he holds her face trying to calm her down as she's panicking, saying, Elena, listen to me, okay? Listen to me. This is the most important thing I've ever asked you to do. I just need you to trust me, please. She nods because she can tell, like, wow, this really is serious, and, you know, I love him. I'm going to trust him. Why would he lead me astray? So she believes him, and he gives her a kiss, and when she opens her eyes, he's gone. He vamps sped away. So I do really feel here in this situation for Stefan because he's doing the right thing. Like, he's really in a rock and a hard place, and he's just asking Elena, his girlfriend, the woman who loves him, to trust him, which shouldn't be that big of an ask. But he also doesn't know a lot of the history of what's gone down with Elena and Damon and her true, you know, intense feelings and trust and relationship with Damon. Like, he doesn't really get it because, you know, back in season 3, when Damon and Elena really, like, developed their, like, strong relationship. Actually, let's go further than that. You know, Elena in season 1, her and Damon had their strong bonds, you know, when she went to Atlanta with him and all that kind of stuff. In season 2, you know, did they have strong bonds in season 2? Kind of, like when she was on his deathbed, but not really. But in season 3, when Stefan went away with Klaus and his humanity was off, Damon was with Elena through all of that, like being her emotional rock and all that kind of stuff. And then when she was trying to figure out her feelings and Stefan told her to, like, go to Denver with Damon and all that stuff happened, Stefan purposely told Elena, like, do not tell me about that. That's your business. I don't need to know. So he doesn't know about that either. And now now he didn't know about what happened at Whitmore College. He didn't know that Elena enjoyed it and had fun. He didn't know how integral Damon has truly been to Elena's transition. So Stefan doesn't realize that Elena is kind of torn. You know, it's not like at the end of season 3 where she chose Stefan and that was the end of it. She's still torn between both brothers, and right now Damon and Stefan are on opposing sides, and Elena is really emotional and wanting to act on impulse to protect Jeremy and just get rid of Connor, which leans a lot more to what Damon wants versus what Stefan wants, which is to be more rational and to play the long game so that Elena can get this cure, which she doesn't know about. So it's all very messy. But ultimately, I wish that Elena could have just trusted Stefan, because why would he lead her astray? Like, his humanity is on, he's on track, like he's not feeding on human blood, like he's clear-headed, like he just wants the best for you. Why can't you just trust him? Oh, hopefully we find out. So over at the Lockwood house, Tyler is talking to a fellow hybrid of his named Dean, and he's trying to convince him to not, you know, go to the grill and, you know, deal with Connor like Klaus told him because it's too dangerous. But Dean is like, Klaus asked me personally, I have to. And he leaves into another room, and Tyler follows him to continue this argument. And we see that Haley is listening in on their conversation when Caroline shows up and notices her. This was their first time meeting, and Caroline's like, who are you? And Haley's like, who are you? And Caroline's like, I'm Caroline. And Haley's like, oh, you're Tyler's girl. Tell me about you. Hey, I'm Haley. She seems so disinterested, and she's literally looking Caroline up and down. A little too much sass, a little too much tood. And Caroline's at least trying to be nice and crosses her arm and is like, well, Haley, that's pretty crazy because I haven't heard a thing about you. And Haley just says, well, I've just been staying here a few days, as if she just expects Caroline to know this. But Caroline doesn't, and clearly seems shocked. She's like, excuse me? I don't know, because you probably think that your boyfriend would tell you if he had a friend that was a girl and that she was going to stay at his house. But no, of course, Tyler didn't, the douche that he is. And Haley just digs the knife in deeper, saying in such a cavalier tone, I needed a place to crash.
Ty's a buddy he was kind enough to offer.
Oh, okay, so now we got a nickname for him too. We had Lockwolf, we had Ty. She's so into him. Caroline's not having this and walks closer to Haley and says, I know all of Ty's buddies, and I haven't heard of you.
How about we cut the crap?
And Haley's like, yeah, I don't do teen drama. Take it up with Ty. Excuse me. And she walks away from Caroline. And girl, you do teen drama. You're doing teen drama right now. She has this really annoying attitude where she's like judging Caroline for like being, you know, a girly girl and like acting like she's so above her. Like she's like the kind of girl that's like, I just don't hang out with girls. There's too much drama. I'm like a boys girl. Like that's her vibe. And if you really cared about your friendship with Tyler, you probably wouldn't want to piss off his girlfriend, because it's already hard enough for a straight man and a straight woman to be friends, let alone when they're in a relationship. So clearly Haley wants the drama. She wants the smoke. Puff, puff, pass. Anyway, Haley enters the room where Tyler is talking to the hybrid Dean, and she's like, Dean, you don't have to do this. Dean, this isn't you. Caroline then enters the room, and Dean tells Haley to stay out of it. And Tyler's like, just listen to her, man. It's suicide. Klaus told you to take Connor by yourself and you can't even fight back. You have to use non-lethal force. What the hell is that? And Dean's like, Klaus gave me a direct order, okay? And Haley's like, it's too dangerous. That psycho already killed Nate. But Dean tells her, you're not a hybrid, okay? You don't get what it's like. When Klaus asks you something, you do it. And Tyler's like, well, I'm a hybrid and I used to do everything Klaus said, but I don't anymore. And you don't have to either. You know, Tyler, it's not that easy. It did take you a couple weeks to break the sire bond, so you think that Dean can just do it within a minute? But Dean tells Tyler to stand up to Klaus and prove it then. And he hands Tyler the phone, dialing into Klaus, and Caroline's like, Tyler, don't. But Tyler ignores her and does it anyway. We see Klaus answer the phone in Italy, and we see that his compelled humans doing the excavation have found the hunter's sword, so that's tea. Love that. And Klaus answers the phone like, Tyler, hope you're not causing any problems, mate. And Tyler responds with, I can do whatever I want, Klaus. I'm not side to you anymore. I mean, Klaus already knew this, but okay. And Klaus is like, fair enough, though I do happen to know your little secret about your time in Appalachia. What was your friend's name? Haley, was it? And we see Caroline reacts to this information looking shocked and hurt. Klaus continues saying, oh, you'd probably prefer if I kept that to myself. And Tyler doesn't respond. He's gagged. He's mute. And Klaus says, I'm sorry, mate. Are you going to answer? Or should I just assume that you're back to being my, how did you phrase it? Oh, yes.
My little bitch.
And then he hangs up the phone. Klaus really ate with this. So good. Like using what Tyler said.
I'm not your little bitch anymore.
And then also revealing this information on the odd chance that Caroline was there to hear it, and she was. Klaus is winning. Tyler looks really uncomfortable, jumps off his high horse and hands Dean the phone and says, do whatever you want. And he leaves the room, walking past Caroline, just completely ignoring her. And Haley follows him and is like, that's it? You're just gonna back down? God, she's really annoying in this episode. So back inside the Mr. Grill, the landline phone rings and Jeremy's about to answer it when Connor grabs his arm and then takes the phone and he answers it. And it's Stefan who tells Connor to free the hostages. And Connor says, oh, so I'll free them as soon as I kill you and everyone like you. And Stefan, who's walking through the woods with a shovel, says, what, so your hunter's mark can grow? Connor looks shook and Stefan's like, yeah, I know all about that. What it means, what you are. Listen, you free the hostages and you and I can have a little chat. Maybe I can tell you about the Brotherhood of the Five. Connor's gagged that Stefan knows about his mark and more about his identity than even he does, but he plays it off and is like, that's a weak move. And Stefan tells him, think about it, Connor. Klaus saved your life. Aren't you the least bit curious why? But Connor is stubborn, so he hangs up the phone and breaks up the phone. He's breaking a lot of phones today. I know you were a wall puncher as a teen. Let me just say that. So we go to the back room of the girl, the back rooms of the girl, where Matt quietly is trying to grab a hammer out of a toolbox. You know, he's trying to do stuff, trying to get them out of there. Meanwhile, April is just sitting on the ground crying. And it's like, when I was a kid, my dad used to tell me these scary stories about vampires. And Matt is like pulling a shelf away from a wall. And he's like, yeah, they're just stories. And he finds a vent. And April continues saying, there's something so familiar about that guy out there. And Matt tells her, look, this is a messed up situation, so you shouldn't buy into any of the craziness that guy's giving, okay? We're gonna be fine, we're gonna get out. But while he's breaking open a vent, April asks what he's doing, and he says there used to be an exit here to an old wine cellar. But when he gets in, he looks down to see that it has been bricked over. And April's like, so that's it, we're screwed. Well, girl, with that negative attitude, at least Matt's trying to do something. And Matt grabs the hammer that he had and a screwdriver, puts a screwdriver to the bricks and puts a cloth over it to muffle the noise and starts banging through. And we see down below in the tunnels that Stefan is in there and can hear Matt banging through the bricks. So we know he is getting closer to the girl. Look, Connor, you're an idiot, okay? This is why you should keep an eye on your hostages, because Matt works at the grill. He knows his way around. Like, you wouldn't have known that there's a way out of here through a wine cellar, but he does. And you're in a separate room, so he's able to bash his way through a couple of bricks. But as we know, Connor hasn't done proper recon of this group. Anyway, so outside the grill, the hybrid Dean arrives, and he's on the phone with Klaus with an earpiece, and he says there's no sign of anyone. And Klaus tells him, look, Stefan's coming at Connor from the other side. He'll free the hostages. Your job is to get Connor out alive. And use caution, mate. He favors booby traps and ambushes. And then inside the grill, we see Connor fiddling with his bomb, and Jeremy sees a rifle and tries to get it, but Connor tells him, you may be a potential hunter, but you make one move and I'll break all 27 bones in your hand. And Jeremy tells him they're not all rad, you know. Some of them, they're my friends. And Connor's like, friends, huh? Yeah, I had a friend like that once. She got turned by this vampire I was hunting. He thought it'd be ironic. And Jeremy asks what happened to her, and Connor tells him, I didn't want to hurt her. She promised that she would keep it under control, but a vampire's like a loaded gun. Eventually it's gonna go off. That's when I got this. And he shows Jeremy a part of his tattoo with like a woman like screaming. Jeremy realizes what he means and is like, you killed your own friend? And Connor raises his voice and is like, listen, if you're gonna be like me, you need to understand vampires kill humans, humans kill vampires. And when did Jeremy say that he wanted to be like you? Very bold assumptions here, Connor. Connor then hears the door open and grabs Jeremy and ducks behind the bar and puts on some music. There's some very loud music playing, and I think it's to like muffle out the sound of the bomb ticking, because like in the song, the singer's like, you make me tick, 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 tick. Or maybe he just is like thinking it's a funny joke. We see that the hybrid Dean has arrived and he sees a trip wire attached to a bomb. So he thinks he's got this and he steps over the wire. But what he doesn't realize is he steps onto a mat that is a landmine because it is a pressure sensor. When he steps off of it, a bomb goes off. We see Matt and April's reaction in the back room, and April looks freaked out and is about to scream, but Stefan shows up and covers her mouth, telling her to be quiet. Back with Dean, he gets up and we see that he is covered in nails from the bomb. Obviously, he's immune to werewolf toxins, so he's fine. But Connor shows up and finishes off the job by shooting him with that shotgun in his chest, and like something like explodes inside of him and it basically shoots a hole through his chest. Like no heart, no organs, no ribs, no bones, nothing. So Dean's dead and the hybrid plan failed. Back in the back room, Stefan gives his phone to Matt with a map for the tunnels and tells him and April that they can use this to escape. And he also tells Matt to take April to Caroline so that, you know, she can, aka compel her. And April doesn't really question what Stefan means by that, but when does she ever? So she just goes along. They're all, finally, we don't have to deal with Matt and April anymore, thank God. Back inside after killing Dean the hybrid, Connor takes off his shirt and Jeremy watches as his tattoo begins to grow. And then Connor spots Stefan enter the grill and he grabs his gun and starts shooting, but Stefan is able to run faster than his bullet. Faster than my bullet, all you other kids with your pump up kicks you got. During this kerfuffle, Connor had grabbed Jeremy and was using him like a human shield, but he then throws Jeremy to the ground, and Stefan, who is hiding behind the bar to dodge the wooden bullets, is telling Connor, you don't have to do this, but Jeremy calls out to Stefan, and Stefan peeks his head around to see that Jeremy is standing on a mat attached to a bomb. So it's not looking too good, because if he moves, he'll blow up into a bunch of little pieces, and I don't think that the Gilbert ring is going to save him from that. Back inside of Lark's apartment, Elena is leaving a voicemail to Stefan saying to call her because she heard an explosion at the grill and she needs to know what's happening. Damon starts waking up and he's pissed, saying he's gonna kill Stefan, but when he tries to get up off the couch and goes into the sun a little bit by the window, he gets burnt, and Elena realizes that Stefan took Damon's daylight ring and is like, why would he do that? And Damon says, because he's playing us, stalling, getting the hybrids, taking my ring, add it all up. He either made a deal with Klaus or he's compelled. And I mean, it is fair enough of them to think that Klaus might have compelled Stefan, because he usually does communicate with them a bit more and doesn't leave them in the dark like this. But also when it comes to Stefan making a deal with Klaus, they don't really have a reason to think that he would do that. But I mean, these are the only logical explanations. And if he did make a deal with Klaus, it's probably for a good reason and you should trust him. But you know, if he is being compelled by Klaus, then you shouldn't. So it's a really 50-50 on whether or not they should trust Stefan. Because also there's not a lot of Vervain in the town, so we don't really know if they're taking Vervain right now to avoid being compelled by originals. Still a bit murky in the waters. Elena's really starting to panic and says she needs to get in there, but Damon tells her that Connor's too dangerous. And this is when Elena turns around and she's like,
So am I, Damon.
I'm dangerous. And Damon can tell that Elena is clearly pissed and not going to back down because, you know, she's upset about her brother being in danger. So he agrees with what she wants and says, fine, but then you're going to have to be smart. Connor doesn't know that you're a vampire. You get as close as you can and then you kill him. And Elena just nods, like throwing her morals to the side about not wanting to kill people. I mean, to be fair, her brother is in danger, but she seems to trust Damon really easily and agree to killing someone. And I don't really agree with Damon doing this because he's putting Elena in danger, but he is also respecting her choices, which is something that normally Stefan does. So maybe she likes that, you know, she wants that agency. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see on that. So inside the grill, Stefan, while still hiding behind the bar, is trying to plead to Connor to end all of this, saying that he can tell him everything he wants to know, but Connor's like, I don't make deals with vampires. We then see Elena arrive outside the grill and she uses her vamp hearing to listen in, and she hears Stefan saying to Connor, listen to me, Connor, if you die right now, then your whole life, all the killing, all of it would have been for nothing. I can give you the truth. Now put the gun down and let Jeremy go. Elena then runs into the girl with her hands up and Connor points her gun at her and she begs him to let Jeremy go. He then points his gun at Jeremy and says if she takes another step closer, Jeremy's dead. Jeremy tells Elena to get the hell out of there, but Elena pleads to Connor saying, please, he's the only family I have left. And Connor's yelling out to Stefan saying, you hear that? Your girl's watching. I will shoot the boy in front of you on the count of 3, 2, 1. Stefan then stands up, slowly revealing himself, and Connor gets ready to shoot, but Elena vamp speeds and grabs him, which Connor does end up shooting, and then the bullet goes into Jeremy's stomach. So not Elena's finest work, but not her worst. And Elena punches Connor, pinning him down and strangling him. Meanwhile, Jeremy is in pain, bleeding. He's about to fall off of the mat and set off the bomb. So Stefan vamp speeds over to Jeremy and grabs him, throwing him, and he jumps, grabbing a wooden table to shield him and Jeremy just in time for when the bomb goes off. But then Elena gets distracted when she hears the bomb, trying to check if Jeremy's okay, which gives Connor enough time to get the upper hand and flip her over, pinning her down, pointing a stake towards her. But Elena is pushing up against him, resisting, and he's getting closer to staking Elena when Stefan vamp speeds and shows up, grabbing Connor off of Elena and disappearing. When Elena gets up, Stefan and Connor are gone. So after a couple moments, Elena is healing Jeremy with her blood, and she looks down at the blood on his stomach, and the hunger surges, her eyes get all red and veiny, and she turns around and apologizes, but Jeremy tells her it's okay, he knows that she won't hurt him, and she asks him why Connor came after him, why this all happened, and he says because Connor said I was like him, because I could see his tattoo. And Elena's confused by this, and Jeremy clarifies his hunter's mark. It's invisible to everyone but me. And Elena looks shocked at this news, and Jeremy's like, Stefan and Damon didn't tell you? Which, yeah, why didn't they tell her? I guess they just wanted to keep her in the dark. And Elena's like, no, who else knows about this? And Jeremy says, well, that's the thing, I don't even know. Apparently I was with Connor all day yesterday, but I can't remember. Someone compelled me. And Elena gets up looking really pissed off and says, I think I know who. Obviously referring to Stefan because she's already suspicious of him and thinking that he might be working with Klaus and how he just took Connor and left. And also he had a little chat with Jeremy the night before. Should have realized that night that he compelled Jeremy, but at least she realized it now. Better late than never. So down in the tunnel, Stefan is walking with Connor with his hands pinned behind his back when he bumps into Damon. He's surprised to see him because obviously he thought without his daylight ring, Damon would not be a part of the situation. But Stefan tells Damon, it's over. I've got him. And Damon's like, it's not over. Not after what I just went through. I had to punch through a boiler room basement into a septic tank to get into this stupid tunnel. So I know he stinks. Also, I mean, that means if he was in a septic tank, he should be covered in poop, but he's not. Anyways, Stefan tells Damon that he's taking him, and Damon says, see, that's the thing, you're not. I don't know what you're up to or what Klaus has over you, but even if I have to go through you, I'm going to kill him. And Stefan says this has nothing to do with Klaus, Damon, you're just gonna have to trust me. And Damon so intellectually puts it, don't want to, don't have to, not gonna. You're gonna give him to me, brother. And Stefan, realizing he's not gonna get anywhere with Damon, shoves Connor and tells him to run as fast as he can, because, you know, he probably thinks he can catch up with him in these tunnels. So Connor runs off and Stefan vamp speeds over to Damon. They're fighting, but Damon gets the upper hand and pins Stefan against a wall, and he shoves his hand in Stefan's chest, holding his heart. You know Damon loves this trick. And Damon's demanding Stefan Stefan tell him why he's protecting Connor, and Stefan says Klaus will kill anyone who knows. Okay, so you're finally admitting that Klaus is involved, okay. And Damon just digs his fist deeper in Stefan's chest and says, then it has to be good. Spill it, spill it. See, Damon, this is why he didn't trust you in the first place, because you're being your typical Damon self, impulsive, destructive, reckless, and selfish. Like, Stefan is telling you, I can't tell you this. If I do, Klaus is gonna kill us all. Like, I don't know, maybe you should just listen to him, but instead you just have to know what's going on. You can't trust your brother. The same brother who sacrificed his life and his relationship to save you from a werewolf bite, let's not forget, but I digress. So after Damon is rummaging around in Stefan's chest cavity, Stefan finally gives in, because he really had no choice, and he says Connor's tattoo is the key for a cure for Elena. Damon's shocked with this and confirms, Klaus told you there's a cure for vampirism? And Stefan, gasping like, hey, can you get your hand out of my chest and off my heart, says, if Connor dies, then we'll lose it forever. Look, I know it's crazy, Damon, but it's hope. It's her only hope. And Damon releases his hand from Stefan's chest, and he doesn't look too happy with this information because, let's be honest, he wants Elena to stay a vampire. Anyway, back with Connor, he's running around the tunnels very disorientated because he doesn't know his way around, and Elena finds him and feeds on him and throws him down to his knees, saying to stay the hell away from her brother. And Connor's like, look at you, so worried about your brother when you're the biggest monster he'll ever meet. And while he was saying this, he was pulling a stake out from his pants that he was hiding, and he stabs Elena in the guts with it, and she tells him, you missed. And without blinking, she snaps his neck. So Connor is dead. Finally, he was starting to get really annoying. This is Elena's first time killing a human, so it's a really big deal. Gonna have some pretty serious repercussions on her. More serious than you would think. So back at Whitmore College in Shane's office, we catch up again with him and Bonnie, and they have their eyes closed. They kind of look like they're meditating. Bonnie opens her eyes and tells Shane, look, this isn't working. It's not you. I can't get into hypnosis. And he looks at Bonnie and is like, are you sure about that? What do you think we've been doing for the past 7 hours? And Bonnie looks at the clock and is like, whoa, girl, that is creepy. He made you like meditate or black out or whatever you want to call it for 7 hours. Don't you think you're giving him a little bit too much control over your mind? Shane tells Bonnie, look, I'm good at this. And trust me, you're doing a lot better than you were when you came in this morning. He then pulls out a candle and tells her he bets that she can light it. All she has to do is want to. But Bonnie tells him that she can't. And he tells her, if you can't, it's only because you're afraid. You're afraid of those spirits and what they might do to your grams. But let me tell you something, Bonnie Bennett. You have a power of your own that you haven't even approached yet. And you don't have to be afraid of them, of anyone. Okay, pep talk from someone who's known her for like a day. But Bonnie's buying it because she's in a dark place and she needs support. And Shane tells her to close her eyes and believe that she can do it and say she's not afraid and mean it. So Bonnie closes her eyes and says it and like is trying to perform the spell, but when she opens her eyes, the candle is not lit in front of her and she says, I guess I wasn't good enough. But Shane's like, I wouldn't be so sure of that. And he looks around and so does Bonnie to see that every candle in that room had been lit. Like a lot of candles. And Bonnie's laughing, smiling. She's so happy she's got her powers back. But also this is a major fire hazard. Like you're gonna like destroy that entire room. But I've always said that with the candles. There's like a comical amount of candles. Also, those candles were not all there in the first scene. So during the 7 hours while Bonnie was blacked out, what was Shane doing? But yeah, like I said, the situation's getting really creepy. Bonnie, don't walk, run. We then go to the woods where Elena is crying with blood on her face and Connor's dead body next to her. And she's digging a grave for him. Damon and Stefan then arrive and she stops and looks at them and then at Connor's body and says, I need to bury him. I killed him. I should bury him. She keeps digging and Stefan can clearly see that this isn't helping her and tries to stop her and comfort her. But Elena shoves him off of her and says, don't. I heard you talking to him, making some kind of secret deal with Klaus. You said you were going to protect Jeremy. Keep me from doing this? And she points down to Connor's body. She continues, you said I could trust you, Stefan. Stefan looks down ashamed and Damon comes to his defense because obviously now he knows what he's been going through all day and is like, it's complicated, Elena. And Elena's like, no, it's not complicated, Damon. You know why? Because he's dead now. You told me to kill him and I did. And in this moment, Elena finally realizes the gravity of the situation and she starts spiraling, crying harder and harder, repeating over and over, I killed someone, I killed someone.
I killed someone.
It's really heartbreaking because obviously this is what, you know, Elena and Stefan were trying to avoid because Stefan said to Damon back in episode 2, name a vampire who hasn't killed at least one person. Elena's compassion is her Achilles heel. If she kills someone, it will ruin her. And now that has come to fruition and Elena is struggling. In all reality though, it's not like she killed an innocent person. It's not like she killed a random. Like this was someone who was repeatedly coming after them and putting them at danger. It was kind of like self-defense, but she's probably not going to spin it that way because she's already in a dark place. I was in a dark place. Over at the Lockwood Mansion, Haley and Tyler are hugging, mourning the loss of their hybrid friend Dean, and Haley's like, we could have saved him. They're holding each other, looking a little too comfortable when Caroline walks in and they quickly separate from each other. And Caroline's like, oh, I apologize, am I intruding? She's fully pissed off at Tyler, rightly so, and Tyler tells her it's not like that, but Caroline says, I keep waiting for you to make up some dumb story so I can at least call you a liar. Is that happening now? And Haley's like, I'm gonna just let you two talk in private, and Caroline sarcastically is like, thank you, how big of you. And Haley has the nerve to look pissed off. Ugh, she really pisses me off this episode. But she just leaves, and Tyler starts his speech telling Caroline she has to understand, and she's like, no, you don't get to tell me what I have to do. I went through hell when I thought that you died. I cried like an idiot, and this whole time you were keeping a secret from me about falling for some werewolf in the Appalachians? And Tyler tells her he never fell for Haley. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing else was going on. But he tells Caroline, Haley saved my life. I almost died trying to break the sire bond. Haley was there for me. She helped me get through it. But nothing else happened. Caroline asks why Klaus would think that then, and Tyler's like, because I'd rather him think that than know the truth. And he finally opens up to Caroline about what the hell's going on between him and Haley, and he says, there are other hybrids that need to be set free. Haley and I can help them, but if Klaus found out about what we're trying to do, he would kill us all. Okay. Whatever, like, should we care about these random hybrids? Should Caroline care about these random hybrids? Also, doesn't negate the fact that you have not been communicating with your girlfriend or setting clear boundaries with Haley. And on top of that, it's pretty clear that Haley has a thing for Tyler, and Tyler should have really had respect for Caroline telling her that Haley was staying in his house, let alone that she existed in the first place. Like, when he came back and told Caroline about how he broke his sire bond, he just failed to mention Haley and her part in it. Like, why did he lie back then, you know? Ugh, I just can't. Like, just communicate. Just be honest with your partners. There's a lot of themes this episode of like dishonesty within relationships, and as we can tell, it comes to bite people in the ass. We then go to the town square where Jeremy is sitting on a bench alone playing with his vervain bracelet. Matt then walks over to him with April, who's like, hey Jeremy, sorry we're late. We had to take this crazy detour. There was a gas leak and then we had to stop by Tyler Lockwood's house because, well, we had to see Caroline. We talked to her for a little bit, but now I was thinking like maybe we could all get some coffee. Oh, but the grill's closed. That's weird. Like, she is talking like a pod person, like a robot. Like, I mean, she's compelled, and we see other people who are compelled, but like, I think maybe her brain's a little fried from being compelled too much within a short span of time. Like, she is losing like days at a time, like the church day, this day. Like, she's just forgetting so much. And it's clearly weighing on her because she sounds not real. She sounds like a shell of a human being. It's really sad, actually, but I don't really care because I don't really care about April. So let's move on from that. So Jeremy's like, oh, that's all right. I need to go home anyway. And Matt's like, yeah, me too. And April's like, oh, okay, bye then, I guess. And she goes to walk away, but Jeremy drops his bracelet on the ground and picks it up and is like, April, did you drop this? And April's like, oh no, that's not mine. And Jeremy's like, are you sure? Here, give me your wrist. And he puts the vervain bracelet on April's wrist. And Matt's like, oh yeah, that looks good on you. You should keep it. And she's like, okay. And then she just walks away. Okay, you're just gonna accept this random bracelet that you got off the ground. That's ugly. You're basically having a trash bracelet. She's just so weird. Like, why does she just like do things? Doesn't question it. In the other episode, when Elena was like, April, why don't you go look around the house? And she's like, okay. And then she goes and does it. This character is just weird. Anyways, after she leaves, Matt asks Jeremy if she's okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just sick of all the secrets. And Matt's like, yeah, you and me both. And then Jeremy looks down at his hand and notices the hunter's mark, the tattoo starting to appear. And he's like, what the hell? And Matt's like, what's wrong? Because he can't see anything on Jeremy's hand. And Jeremy brushes it off like, oh, nothing. So it looks like Connor was right about Jeremy being a potential. And that story he told him in the previous episode about him meeting someone with the hunter's mark saying he was a potential, and then when that guy died, he got the mark. Now that same thing is happening to Jeremy. So it looks like Jeremy's about to become a hunter. One of the five, one of the Brotherhood of the Five, which isn't exactly good considering his sister is now a vampire. Really raising the stakes up here. So over at the Salvatore house, Stefan enters his room where Damon is sitting at his desk asking how Elena is, and Stefan says, oh, she's just angry, full of guilt, hasn't said a word to me other than she wants to be left alone. He then notices Damon's reading his journal, because literally everyone always does, and he snatches it from Damon, who says, I had to go through 6 locks to get it. Needed something to back up your insanity. Well, it's good that Stefan's finally locking up his diaries, but it's not exactly working because vampires can break locks, so he should probably be hiding it. But I digress. And Damon asks him how he's going to tell Klaus that he lost a hunter and a hybrid, and Stefan's like, oh, he's on a plane, which means I'll get to live for another 6 hours. And Damon plays along saying, well, I got your back, you know, for when Klaus comes to murder you. But let's be real, we know Klaus would never kill his Stefancy. Stefan then thanks Damon for not saying anything to Elena, and Damon's like, about what? A cure that we don't have, can't find, and probably doesn't exist? You're welcome. And Stefan's like, she doesn't need to know that she destroyed her chance of being human. And Damon's like, alleged chance, but Stefan says that he believes Klaus. He says to Damon, you didn't hear his story. I believe every word. But Damon says he's going to remain a skeptic for now and asks Stefan what his next move is. And Stefan says, well, Klaus says that there's a Brotherhood of the Five, which means that there are other hunters out there. I'm just going to keep looking until I can find one. Now, it did take Klaus 900 years to find a hunter, but luckily we've got Jeremy. Just when Stefan finds out that he's a hunter, Jeremy's just got to kill a bunch of vamps, grow that mark, and then boom, boom, we can get that cure for Elena. Damon has a drink with Stefan and says, sure, Stefan, since you asked, I'd be happy to go on a suicide mission with you for a potentially non-existent cure. But Stefan points out that just a couple hours ago, Damon was ready to rip his heart out. And Damon tells him, because you were being a pain in my ass. Now I just need to know one thing. Why do you want to cure her? And Stefan's like, well, what kind of question is that? And Damon's like, well, it's a legitimate one. Do you want to cure her because she's a vampire, or because she's not cut out to be, or because you can't love her if she is one? And Damon thinks he really clocks Stefan here, but I don't really think that. I think Stefan loves Elena regardless whether she's a vampire or a human. I just think that there's other levels here. Like, Stefan knows that Elena doesn't want to be a vampire. She never wanted to be a vampire, and he respects that. And also, I think Stefan knows that with Elena being a vampire and, you know, having to feed on human blood because she's having that issue, he can't connect with her on that level because then he'll go full Ripper mode. So she's going to connect with Damon more on that level. And then also, being a vampire magnifies your feelings. Elena already had feelings for Damon that she was suppressing while she's a human. Now those are being magnified. As a vampire, she's starting to become a bit more similar to Damon than she is Stefan. It's all a mess. And me personally, I think I said this in my last video, I'm a Elena shipper like through and through while Elena is human. But when Elena is a vampire, her and Stefan's relationship, it doesn't work. At least we don't get to see it work. So we're gonna have to see what happens with that because they're in rocky territory. Anyway, Stefan says, I'll always love her, but she's not supposed to be this person. I don't want her to be. And fair. And Damon's like, well, if I'm gonna ride this fairy tale to its conclusion, let me be clear about one thing. I'm fine with her either way, brother. So if we do this, I'm doing it for you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Whatever you tell yourself, Damon, to not feel like the bad brother. Anyway, over at the Gilbert house, Elena is showering, washing all of Connor's blood off of her. She's not looking too good. We hear her narration as she writes in her diary, her vampire diary at the end of the night. Very nice way to start and close off the episode. And she says, Dear diary, today I did the thing I'm most afraid of. I lost control. I killed someone. I used to think the worst feeling in the world was losing someone you love, but I was wrong. The worst feeling is the moment that you realize you've lost yourself. Bars. Suddenly, a drop of blood falls onto her diary and then her hand, and she puts her hand to her face, checking her nose. Like, she's not bleeding anywhere in her face, so she's kind of confused. She stands up and sees blood on the floor, and it's a trail to the bathroom door. She follows it. There's a bloody handprint on the door. She slowly opens the door and turns on the light to a horror scene. There is blood splattered all over her bathroom, and she walks in to see that there is writing on the mirror in blood that says killer. She stumbles back, freaking out, and slips on the blood, falls to the ground, and when she does, she looks back up and everything's back to normal. There's no blood anywhere. She looks in the mirror and the writing is gone. So looks like Elena's losing her mind. You're losing your memory now. So that was the end of season 4, episode 5 of the Vampire Diaries, titled The Killer. So Elena was the killer. Well, Connor was also the killer. They're both killers. Killer now. The killer, he's escaping. Anyway, this was a really great episode. Love the action, love the vibes, and it's really starting to show the rift between Elena and Stefan, which I'm not loving. But you know, the action was great. It was fun. We're heading in a direction I don't like for the next couple episodes, you guys. I have to be honest, it's gonna get rough. It's gonna get rough. So I hope you stick with me on this journey because I've got a lot to say. I'm also very curious about your opinions because we're getting to a place within the season where stuff is getting messy. I've been using the word messy a lot, but it just gets messier and messier. Now that we got Connor kind of out the way, we can just really focus on some other things. The stakes are building, the lore is building. We got a lot going on. But anyway, guys, that is the last episode I'll be discussing in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts on anything. Like, were you on Stefan and Klaus's side or Damon and Elena's side in this episode? Like, I really want to know. Or just anything else you have to say. What do you think of Haley? What do you think of Shane? What do you think of April? What do you think of all these new characters? I would love to know. Also, if you want more Vampire Diaries content from me in between these uploads here on YouTube, because these videos take a long time to make, I do have a companion series over on my Patreon where we actually react to the scenes from the show and dissect the characters and their relationships and the storylines, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely check that out. Lots of videos over there. And also, if you haven't seen my previous Vampire Diaries videos, I'll link to playlist down below, as well as my previous video, which was Vampire Diaries characters as Taylor Swift albums. Really fun collab that I did with my friend Ali, so definitely check that out. I'll link that down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope to see you in my next one, and as always, I hope that you have a great day or night wherever you're in the world. Bye!